You all look great out there. All of you look great, but the particularly bright colors in row 1 and 2 and 1, 2, 3, 5 look pretty good.
Somebody called him Tommy this morning.
Tommy? I think maybe he's been known for that for a long time. All right, we will begin. Apologize for the delay. Welcome to the Clovis City Council meeting. I don't really know. I've never done this start to finish with the virtual real-life person, so help me if I get lost. I'm sure Bob will take pleasure in correcting me as I go along.
We have electrical shocks under the chair.
So I think I'm just going to say that to start. We are glad you are here. We welcome your participation in our council chambers. That's all of you. On our website, www.cityofclovis.com/agendas. If you'd like to hear us that way, and you can participate by phone and submit your comments in writing. So we are glad that you are here. Is that enough? Is that good? Okay. The written comment and instruction, if you haven't done it now, it's too late. I did the verbal thing, which says you should do it by 4 o'clock. Too late for that, too. We will do our WebEx participation, so we could be out here by 6:15. And then we'll call the order. So can you take roll, please, Carrie? What? It says call to order. Oh, call to order. Skip that. I'd like to call the meeting to order. And now I'd like to do the flag salute. Oh, but I can't do my own flag salute. You do it.
Okay. Please join me in pledging allegiance to our flag and to our republic.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Gosh, it's hard to be new. Okay, it's hard to be a new council member. Carrie.
All right. Councilmember Ashbeck?
Apparently only partially here, but here.
Councilmember Bessinger is absent. Councilmember Monutoa?
Here.
Councilmember Whalen?
Here.
And Mayor Flores is absent.
So tonight, the three of us are all you have. And per the city attorney, any vote we take tonight will require all 3 aye votes, since we are that would be the majority. So anything that received a 2-to-1 vote would be considered a denial. So that's where we are. All right. We get to start today with 4 really fun things. And the first is a presentation of Proclamation regarding all of our friend Wilma Tom Hashimoto as Mother of the Year. I can only aspire. And that proclamation will be read by Councilmember Monutoa.
Okay. It gives me a great honor to be able to recognize my dear friend, Wilma Tom Hashimoto, as Mother of the Year. Whereas Wilma is a mother of one, but is a mother to many in the Clovis community. She has been called Mama Hashimoto, or Wilmama, due to her generosity, patience, and encouragement with others. And whereas Wilma has spent 25 years in education, serving as classroom teacher, district administrator for the Clovis Unified School District, Director of Early Care and Education for Fresno County Superintendent of Schools, Assistant Superintendent for Fresno Unified School District, and a Research Associate for Ames Center of Math and Science Foundation. And whereas for 12 years of her 25 years in education, she has been the driving force in growing the number of preschool programs in Clovis Unified School District. And whereas she has worked with David and Lucille Packard Foundation, a private foundation that provides grants to nonprofits and school districts across the state to develop and implement preschool programs. And whereas Wilma is also known for her presence with high school students, she is often known for helping students navigate the college application process. And whereas she is now the executive director of CASA, of Fresno and Madera counties, where she is dedicated to
Good. Thanks, Mom.
advocating for the best interests of abused and neglected children in the foster care system. And whereas Wilma has taken in families and individuals in distress, women and their children who did not feel safe in their homes and needed a safe place to stay. She has helped those in distress to reflect and be reassured. She is often providing those who drop in with the refrigerator full of food and help with purchasing clothing or other necessities. And whereas Wilma Hashimoto, along with her fellow nominees, will be honored at the 78th Annual Fresno County Mother of the Year Luncheon on Friday, May 6th. Community members are invited to join in honoring all mothers at that luncheon. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that the Clovis City Council does hereby declare this Mother's Day, May 8th, 2022, as Wilma Tom Hashimoto Day, and is signed by our Mayor Jose Flores on this second day of May 2022. Would you like to say something?
Well, I was thoroughly, once again, usually you can't get anything by me, but I am so surprised. In fact, we have with us from the Women's Chamber of Commerce, and they said, yeah, we're coming out for the presentation. I said, oh, no need to come out. We're giving a CASA presentation. It's all confused. And I'm the one who's confused. So thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Lynn Ashbeck, Bob, I suppose there's a protocol to call you, and then Long, you have been my friends for decades, and to be honored in this way, it's just so amazing. I am a resident of Clovis since 1985. I call Clovis my home. My father called Lynn his friend. And my daughter has the greatest respect for all three of you. We are a three-generation family of Clovis. And to be named Fresno County Mother of the Year, I think I have bragging rights to my future son-in-law. No fear there. But I also like to think not only for my daughter who paid attention to all the stories, I thought she tuned me out, but for all the lessons, and to see her now to give back to the community. But I also stand here representing court-appointed special advocates, the foster youth, and thank you very much for talking about my personal life, because I tend to think what we practice in our personal life should reflect also in our professional life. And like all of us, we have the capability to stand in the gap where people need us, and all we need to do is to take that step forward, not knowing if we're going to do it right or wrong, but we just do it with no expectation like tonight. But it's just been an amazing ride, and yes, my employment, I always like to say I'm like Mulan until I hit 80, and I'm going to look like Mulan's grandmother. So that's my long work history. Thank you. Thank you so much, City Council members Wayland, Ashbeck, and Montoya.
Hey, Wilma, we want to give you the gilded cover that we have for your proclamation.
Suitable for framing.
Yeah.
Did you really think you were coming here to make a CASA presentation? Has somebody kind of lied to you? Who did that? Good job, whoever that was. Well, seriously, no. Seriously, no. Well, but you.
Well, after my presentation about CASA, please, I wanted to bring you some cat hunter. It is a full town Clovis, and there is display and working tile.
Just placed on there.
You've never been there, have you? Have you ever been there?
Right? Oh, yeah, right there.
Yeah, please.
Oh.
There you go. That was a presentation from
So, seriously, do you want to give us your CASA presentation? I feel a little bad, because there's party favors from CASA? Oh, fine. Okay. Okay, go ahead. How do you not do it now? What else is there left to do? We've got a gift and party favors, what else is there? Just kidding. We would not deny you a moment to speak about something you love, which is CASA. So you may, if you would like. Then tell me you don't have PowerPoint slides though, do you?
18 PowerPoint slides, but I'll reduce it to 10.
Great. Angie?
I'm kidding.
I know you are.
So thank you again, Fresno Women Chamber of Commerce, for, boy, you guys can keep a secret for 2 years, and then tonight when I'm calling, it's like, don't come out, you're mistaken. Amazing. I do want to introduce tonight Angie Martinez. She is the Senior Advocate Supervisor for CASA. And why this is dear to my heart is that there are over 3,000 foster youth in Madera and Fresno counties. Alone in Fresno County, it topples around 2,700, and it varies. So CASA receives the most neglected and abused children in the foster care system. So we serve 15%. And it's extremely hard work. Angie was an advocate and then a supervisor and now a senior supervisor. So she knows the emotional toll that it can take. But we could not make a difference without community volunteers who can just give 10 to 15 hours. Because through that 10 to 15 hours, a month, by the way, a month, and I'm looking at some people with colorful shirts on that might be able to be an advocate, is that truly with one person, one constant adult, we have seen some amazing lives change from 0.3 GPA to graduating high school, to going on to college, for their self-esteem to know that they can call, especially during COVID, when their mental health was just tanking so quickly. And mental health is very dear to my heart. And to have that constant adults like, let's just dispel the rumors about COVID. And yes, you're going to be okay. And yes, I'm so sorry that you were removed from your home, placed in a resource family, away from your family and friends, and oh, yeah, school is shutting down and you lost contact with your teachers and your friends. So it's been the last couple of years, but we never shut our door, and we never laid off any of our employees, and our advocates stepped it up, where they logged, was it 16,000 miles, is that right? 16,000 miles at $5.50 a gallon, you can figure that out. But they're volunteers, and so we can't stop there. I have a waiting list. Angie has a waiting list of 75 in Madera. We have 75 in Fresno. And if you can spare the time of 10 to 15 hours, if you can share with others, we do need that. And of course, we invite you to our annual crab feed, which is Friday, September 9th. It is our major fundraiser, and I invite you to check out our website, and if you can give a time of financial resources, we welcome. So thank you for allowing me this short time and for this honor. But
thank you, Wilma.
If I may, since we're recognizing Wilma as a mother, I just wanted to share a personal story. I didn't want to embarrass Wilma, but hopefully she will feel complimented. When I first met Wilma, I was serving on the local planning council as appointed by Supervisor Watterson onto a child care council. And as a young buckaroo going in there, not knowing protocol, I think I was not very gentle in my comments. And I called her, we met up for lunch, and she was so gracious, and she was forgiving, and she was understanding, and she helped explain the issue so that way someone new into the industry understood it. And from that day, I think it has built a friendship, and so she lives what she is being honored for as a true mother who cares and who has the qualities of a mother that we all look to in our own mothers. So I just wanted to share that, Wilma. Thank you for that, and congratulations.
I will just add my deep love and affection for you as a human, and the story you tell about your dad and you and your daughter always makes me cry, so thank you. And you do live what you believe every single day, and those, you may only have one daughter, but you have thousands of kids whose lives you've made better, and that is really the hope of all of us as moms. So it's great to see you here tonight, and congratulations. And thanks for the CASA presentation, and thanks for coming with her and acting like it was CASA. I don't know. Good job. Thank you. Thanks. So our next presentation and proclamation are to two of our outgoing personnel commissioners. So if I might invite Darren, I see you there, Darren Rose and Carrie Mercer, to join up here, and we will recognize you. Both of these Clovis residents have served on the Personnel Commission, Carrie since 2014 and Darren since 2016. So on behalf of all of us, and as I often remind my colleagues, the only Personnel Commissioner up here, former Personnel Commissioner up here, we want to thank you for your time and your commitment. It's you didn't do it for the money, and you surely didn't do it for the sort of celebrity that comes with it, but your role in being those eyes and ears on the folks that we choose to employ in the city of Clovis is really important, because the only thing that keeps Clovis Clovis is the culture of our employees. And so your ability to spot talent and to make sure that they can fit and they're as committed to this community as you two were, has made a big difference. So on behalf of my colleagues and all of the citizens of the city of Clovis, thank you for your service on the Personnel Commission. We have small plaques that I'm sure you'll hang in your living room. Okay, just kidding about that. But would certainly welcome comments from either of you if you'd like to just make a few thoughts or share your thoughts as you step away from this role. Carrie, you want to go first?
Sure. Thank you. I just want to thank you all so much for the opportunity to serve. It really has been a pleasure to kind of have contact at a different level with the folks here at the City of Clovis and see the inner workings. I'm just so impressed and just ever more thankful to be a resident at the city. So I really appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you. Carrie and Darren?
Yes, much what Carrie said. It was very impressive to see the quality of folks that the City of Clovis hires and what the HR department does here in terms of the recruitment process. And just want to thank you for the opportunity to serve my fellow residents and for the trust that the City Council and the administration puts in us to help vet these candidates.
You bet. I didn't ask Shauna or Lori. I thought I saw Lori Shively. Do you want to do you want to comment at all? Since they help make your job easier.
Thank you. I just want to thank them for their service. They've been great with all the interviews that we've done, and sometimes some of the other stuff that they've been involved with regards to what the Personnel Commission does. So Carrie and Darren, you've done a wonderful job, and thank you for your service.
Thank you. Thanks. And if you'll each come up, we have a plaque for you, and Darren, yours doesn't have Carrie's name on it, but they say the same thing otherwise. Personnel Commissioner and appreciation for dedicated service to the citizens of the City of Clovis, California. Carrie, there you go. You're welcome. Thanks for coming. Nice to see you. There you go. Thanks so much. Oh.
Wow.
Don't. All right. Next on our celebrations tonight is a presentation of proclamation declaring May 1st through May 7th as Teacher Appreciation Week, and that will be read by Councilmember Whalen.
Okay. So I don't think we have anybody here to receive this proclamation. So I'm just going to ask, if you've been a teacher, would you mind standing? I think there's been at least one.
Beth?
There we go. There we go.
Wilma?
Carol, that's the one I was waiting for.
Doris?
All right,
Carol?
good.
Okay.
Oh, keep standing if you don't mind. I just want to read this to you. We want to honor you. All right, so, Teacher Appreciation Week. Whereas, as a nation, we must provide every girl and boy in America with an opportunity for a world-class education, and this cannot happen without great teachers. And whereas, during National Teacher Appreciation Week, we honor America's outstanding teachers, especially the teachers in our very own Clovis Unified School District, and the vital role they play in the lives of our children and the success of our community and country. And whereas our best teachers are role models who show our kids how to work hard and pursue a brighter tomorrow and help them realize the best versions of themselves. And whereas great teachers make a lasting impact on their students' lives, that is very true. When a young person learns from an exceptional teacher, they are more likely to graduate, attend college, and succeed later in life. Teachers lift up the next generation and enrich our nation, and they deserve our gratitude and thanks. And whereas teaching is an all-encompassing commitment, and teachers make enormous sacrifices to support their students. During the COVID-19 pandemic, Clovis Unified teachers created a healthy learning environment, finding a new way to make learning, whether online or in person, interesting, keeping students' success as their top goal. And whereas Clovis Unified teachers are continuing the legacy of the district's founding superintendent, Dr. Floyd Buchanan, who believed that teachers are role models and that if you really want to develop winners, you've got to surround children with winners. And whereas I call upon students, parents, and all Americans to recognize the hard work and dedication of our teachers and to observe this week by supporting teachers through appropriate activities, events, and programs. Now therefore be it proclaimed that the Clovis City Council does hereby declare May 1st through 7th as Teacher Appreciation Week. In witness, therefore, I hereunto set my hand and cause the official seal of the City of Clovis to be affixed the second day of May, 2022. It's signed by our Mayor, Jose Flores. Round of applause for our teachers.
Very nice. Thank you, and thank you to our teachers. And the final proclamation tonight is a proclamation declaring May as Mental Health Matters Month. And I will take the privilege of reading that, and I know that mental health matters to all of us, so I won't ask you to stand up if it matters to you, because it matters to all of us. Whereas mental health challenges are one of the most common health conditions in California, affecting 1 out of 6 adults, and impacting both the person experiencing mental health challenges and those persons who care and love the person facing the challenge. And whereas 1 out of every 24 Californians with a serious mental illness have difficulty functioning in everyday life, and if left untreated, have life expectancies 25 years shorter than the general population. Whereas every day millions of people face stigma related to mental health and may feel isolated and alone, going years before receiving any help. And whereas more Californians have expressed experiencing challenges to their mental health during the pandemic and are increasingly asking for support. And whereas recovery can and does happen, and all of Fresno County residents should know that support and help is available regardless of any individual situation. And whereas creating a community where everyone feels comfortable reaching out for the support they deserve is crucial to ending the stigma around mental health. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that the Clovis City Council does hereby declare the month of May as Mental Health Matters Month. And that is also signed by our Mayor, Jose Flores, on this date. So I don't think anybody from the Department of Behavioral Health is here tonight. So we will just all take a moment and be grateful for our health and make sure we talk about our health, including our physical and mental health, because it matters to all of us. That's how we all get up every day and put one foot in front of the other. So thanks for letting me read that out loud as well. All right. Next up is public comments. This is a chance for folks to address the City Council on a matter that is within our jurisdiction but not on our agenda tonight. We ask that you keep your comments to 5 minutes or less. Is there anybody in the audience wishing to address the council on something that is not on our agenda tonight? Is there anybody? Oh, please, sir. If you would just state your name and address, that would be great.
Hello, my name is Tom Keaton. I live in Clovis. I've been a resident of Clovis since 1947. I graduated from Clovis High School here in 1965. And we live in a nice neighborhood near Shaw and Minnewawa. And, we have neighbors across the street that throw garbage in the street. Literally just garbage. And it's been like that for about 2, 3, 4 months now. And, it's causing, rats coming from it. Every time the wind blows, it blows stuff in our yard. And we take a lot of pride in our yard, like a lot of our neighbors. And we just we've addressed this with the police department, the solid waste department. I even called the Fresno County Health Department one day to get some assistance, and they said it was out of their jurisdiction to do that. I'm just begging of the council, and thank you for your time, to address this and see what can be done. Everything, the police department was there one day and left a citation on their door to clean it up with so many days, and they haven't even touched it. The neighbors come out and they got containers of garbage, and they just take it and dump it in the street. And it's just a very bad eyesore.
Are they homeowners or are they renters, do you know?
They're homeowners. This particular house burned down about 2 years ago in July, and they just finished rebuilding it. It's larger than it used to be. They did a lot of work to it, and the people moved back in and just started trashing it. They're tearing screens off of windows, breaking windows. One day we saw a toilet laying out there in the street, brand new toilet, and there are mattresses and everything else out there in the street. And we called the solid waste this afternoon, and they're scheduled for another special pickup Thursday, which is $15 for every time they pick up. But right after they pick it up, they're starting again. And it's just an ongoing problem.
Thank you, Mr. Keaton. So Heaton or Keaton?
Keaton.
Keaton, that's what I thought. Thank you for your comment. So,
Mayor, I recommend that, it sounds like a code enforcement issue. Assistant City Manager Andy Hausler is in charge of our code enforcement. I'd recommend he meet with Mr. Keaton and get the specifics on the address, and we can contact him and follow up.
yeah, so we will, Clovis is relentless in code enforcement when we're aware of it. Sometimes it takes 100 times to go out, but we'll keep going out till it gets cleaned up. So Andy, if maybe you can meet Mr. Keaton out in the lobby, just get your address and connect, and we'll take care of it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for your time.
Of course, thanks for coming down. Sorry you had to do that. Anyone else in the audience wishing to speak to us on an item that is not on our agenda tonight? Is there anybody on that line?
No.
All right. And I will note that we have one public comment. It is in regards to the Carnegie Library, so I'll hold on to that until we get to that item. All right. So the next item, I'm a little, hold on a second. I talk too much. Don't agree with me. Let's see. I have too many pieces of paper, which is just what I do. Next up is Ordinances and Resolutions. With respect to the approval of resolutions and ordinances, the reading of the title shall be deemed a motion to waive a reading of the complete resolution. And unless there is a request by a council member that the resolution or ordinance be read in full, further reading shall be deemed waived by unanimous consent of the council. I don't think we have any of those tonight. Next is the consent calendar. These items are routine in nature. They're placed on our consent calendar. They're considered and acted on as one vote. And a vote in favor of this is a vote in favor of all of them. So I will ask the council if there are any items to be pulled from the consent calendar. Anyone in the audience wishing to pull an item to talk specifically to it from the consent calendar? Anyone online to speak to any of the items?
No.
All right, so I'll bring it back to this council here. Go ahead.
I move that we approve the consent calendar.
I'll second that.
There's a motion and a second to approve the consent calendar. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 3 aye and 2 absent. Next, under administrative items, hello, excellent. Under administrative items that we have tonight, the first is a receive and file item on 325 Pulaski. the Carnegie Library and the current Clovis Chamber of Commerce building. And I'll just preface this by saying, I did ask that this be put on our agenda simply so our community can have the shared set of facts as we talk about this particular building. So there's lots of conversation about it, afloat in the parade, lots of interest, but I just want to make sure that we're all operating with the same facts, mostly me. The history is not as clear in my mind. So I did ask for this to be put on the agenda. I appreciate the staff report. And with that, I'll turn over to Andy.
All right, good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and members of council. So this is a staff report regarding the background of the Clovis Chamber of Commerce building, but before that, it was the original Carnegie Library here in Clovis, California. It was built as part of a Carnegie grant of $7,000 in 1914. There was about 2,500 of these libraries built across the country through the Carnegie grants. And the way I understand those to work is a group of community citizens came together that wanted a library, and they sought a grant from the Carnegie Foundation to help fund that. So $7,000 apparently went a little bit further back in 1914 than it does today. They built a building there on Pulaski Avenue, and that was the community library until 1976. In 1976, the city took ownership at that time as the library has moved to its current location, which is just around a couple buildings over from us now. And at that time, it was in significant disrepair, based on the history that I've read. And this is the oldest shot of the library I could find, and I see a few of them out there. So I think this is some of the best documented history of what it originally looked like. So fast forwarding to 1976, the building is vacant, and numerous efforts were underway over the next 10 years to restore it. Many citizen groups in the city were involved in that. In that time, the city came to an agreement with the Clovis Chamber of Commerce to take over the building in exchange for finishing major repairs and maintenance of the building, as well as creating a public space. It did include a clause that allowed the city to purchase the building back at that original agreement. In 1986, the Fresno County Historical Commission did note the building on their listing of places of interest. And the chamber occupied the building and has ever since. Significant more changes were made to the building. As you can see, it's a little bit different at this point. This is probably about 1988. And then this is how it looks today. Currently, the building does not comply with ADA laws. That makes it unable to open to the public, and ongoing repairs are needed. It is an old building. In 2018, the chamber asked to be released from the previous agreement. It was granted by council as the chamber had fulfilled their original agreement, and it was discovered the ability for the city to take back the building was legally questionable. This was due to original agreements not being recorded on the property, the ones back from 1986. Therefore, the city does not have any legal interest in the property. The chamber has indicated to the city, the chamber has not indicated to the city what its plans are for the building or for the property, but we know they're actively considering a variety of options. No applications for changes to the building or the property have been submitted to the city for review. And that, I'll go back. That is our presentation on the brief history of the building.
Thank you. Any questions for staff at this point?
I had a question, Mayor Pro Tem. So, Andy, I guess what we're hearing that the chamber might be doing has never been formally discussed with any of our staff.
We haven't received any applications.
Yeah, not applications, but discussions with either Sean or yourself. So that way, even though no formal notice has been given as in there's an application, we haven't been involved in just sharing ideas and thoughts with.
Yeah, I know that our previous planning director was involved in conversations about what to do with the building as they were struggling with that, but they never progressed into even a pre-development application. They were just ideas that were discussed.
Okay. And those ideas have, to our knowledge, has never been formally pursued where they're getting engineering done or architecture done?
Or not that I'm aware of. Yeah.
Okay. And with regards to our interest, then really we have nothing after that decision of 2018 then?
That's correct.
So we have no legal ability to insert, to affect, it's almost like private property where you can't come on my home and tell me to do something inside my home. Is that pretty much how it is?
That's correct.
Okay. And the only way would be eminent domain? Is that how it would work, or we have nothing like that?
Yeah, I mean, eminent domain is an option for a public purpose.
Yeah.
But other than that, I'm not aware. Maybe our city attorney has some thoughts on other mechanisms, but I'm not aware of anything, as it is private property.
Okay.
And I would just add to that is going to be that if the chamber did come forward that proposing something that was not allowed within the zoning, the council would have some oversight at that point. But if they came forward with how it's currently zoned, we'd have limited oversight.
And internally, do we have any historical type preservation at all? Or is that something the county level does, and then it would affect us as a city to preserve something, whether it's a tree or a trail or creek or a building like this?
Yeah, the city does not have any historic preservation ordinances or registers or protection mechanisms. The County of Fresno, they have a group, the Historical Preservation Commission, that's appointed by the Board of Supervisors. That group catalogs places that are historic interests, but it does not provide a regulation that protects. It's more of a catalog or an index of interesting points in the county.
So it would have to be the private owner who wants to preserve something. For example, when we were talking about Heritage Grove, there's I forgot the name of the home that was burnt down on Minnewawa and Shepherd, where they wanted to kind of restore that feature.
The Garfield School.
So it would be something which a private citizen would like to preserve something for the city and or for history. Yeah. It would have to work that way more so currently.
Yes.
Okay. Thank
you. The historical designation, you said it briefly, was from who?
The Fresno County Historical Commission added the building onto their list about 1986. I think that's a lot of things happened with the library at that point. And in looking at what that list does effectively is that it just catalogs it. It doesn't provide protectionary status.
Okay. I do think there's an opportunity. I think I said this a few meetings ago, but I do think it's probably time that we have a historical preservation committee of some sort, either a subset of the tourism committee. I'm not sure what. I don't know about ordinances, but I do think over time, I don't have that many buildings left, but it probably is worth holding on to that through the Historical Society or somehow having a committee that really is attentive to the historical preservation of what makes Clovis Clovis, and that's some of those old buildings in Old Town and other places for sure, the Garfield School, brick arch and whatnot. So I would offer that again as a request for staff to take a look at. All right, anything else for? So we're here. We will open the public portion. Those of you that are here to speak of it, I can tell who you are because I'm very smart, and you all have on a T-shirt. Not everyone, I know. Mr. Smithcamp didn't get this T-shirt memo, apparently. And we would love to hear from you. There is no action tonight. We are not making a single decision. We are just here to understand together the building, where it sits. And I see Greg is here, so if you want to chime in, you don't want to chime in, whatever. But we're just here to have a conversation about it, is all. So there's no action, there's no, nothing we're going to take tonight in terms of a decision, but we're glad that you're all here to help us understand it more. Sari.
Hi, I'm Sarah Miller. I live at 10267 East Ashland, Sanger, and I'm fifth generation Clovis side. And I'm here because of Peg Boss. And if she could be here, she would be here. And I can't tell Peg no. And so... Join the club. She became aware of the Chamber's intention to demolish this building and build a new building there. And this is not a secret. It's not even a carefully held to the chest rumor. It is an actual fact. And so I asked Paul Halajian to come and speak just a bit. The only conversation we were able to actually have with the chamber was by Zoom, and they fall back on their failure to actually make the building accessible to the handicap, which was all of their maintenance was part of their contract with the city. They chose to leave the eyesore that is there now and claim that it's not accessible to handicapped people, which is their fault. So anyway, we got beyond that, and Paul offered to interview them and find out what their desires are for the future. And so he went to some considerable work, which any of us would appreciate. Paul Halajian's work that's given gratis, that satisfies their every desire, at which point I called Paul and said, what if this committee said we wanted to help the chamber raise money to build your plan and solve their problems, and which I can think that Clovis would do that. And he said that dovetailed very well with the chamber's next request, which was, could you put some numbers to your plan? So once again, Paul Halajian stepped up and provided those numbers. And being as grateful as they are, that was the last conversation we ever had with them, because they are intent on tearing down this building. And so I'm going to ask Beth Christensen to say what the exchange she had with their manager in a public forum. So I think that gives you the information that you need to say we are doing everything we can to accommodate the chamber getting what they need, because there is ample space there for them to accommodate a modern building. But in a newsletter that was on their website, Gary Honeycutt is the, I think, chair of a committee to do this. He said he's going to get off the chamber board, but the last thing he's going to do, he's going to make sure this building gets replaced. So Gary Honeycutt's business is in Fresno, by the way. So I don't think it's up to him to say what happens to our Carnegie Library. And so I know that we have legal opinions that your hands are tied, but I think we could use some assist here, because the chamber defaulted on their promises to take care of this building. And I think that we can do better in Clovis. This is an important building to the people of Clovis, and we need to preserve it. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah.
Sarah, can I ask you a couple questions? So you're saying that Mr. Halajian actually provided plans to make what currently is compliant, and those are also equated to actual dollars in order to do it. Is that correct? Yes.
Can I ask Paul to talk?
Okay.
Hi. So Paul Halajian, I'm an architect here in Clovis, 389 Clovis Avenue. I have sort of three relevant attributes as to why I'm here. I'm an architect, number one. I'm a business owner in Old Town Clovis, and I'm a member of the City of Fresno's Historic Preservation Commission. So I'm interested and somewhat passionate about historic buildings. And when you have a part of your community called Old Town, to have old buildings seems to make that even more relevant. So when I heard the plight of this fantastic piece of Clovis's history, I thought I better get involved. So I have no desire to go any further with this other than to help this process. So what I volunteered to do in a Zoom call that we all had was offer my services pro bono to see if I could ameliorate the problem that the chamber is facing, a building that's not accessible and doesn't meet their current needs as a modern office. So I met with them, and from that meeting I came up with a plan that demonstrated how they could meet their needs and how they could address the accessibility issues. It's very high level, it's conceptual in nature only. And the other thing that they said they wanted was a new events space. So that meant really a separate standalone building. And we determined that there's adequate area on their site where we could put a new building that would meet their assembly needs. So I gave them that plan. They received it warmly. They asked for some ballpark figures. This is I don't know, a couple of years ago. I'm certain things have changed since then from a monetary standpoint, but, they do have a plan, whether it's the perfect plan or not, I don't know, but there is, we've demonstrated that there is a way to meet their needs, to preserve that building, allow them to function as a, you know, contemporary modern office, meet their long-range goals of having an assembly space, and preserve this fantastic artifact that's part of Clovis's history, so.
Thanks.
Mr. Elijah, what was the cost estimate at that time?
I don't remember the exact number. It's, as I recall, it's somewhere between like $2 and $3 million.
Thank you.
And again, that was some time ago, and things have changed radically since then, so.
That would be, we'd all agree on that fact for sure. Beth, do you want to make a comment? And I'll just say for the record, I am on the board of the Clovis Historical Society, so I'll just sit right here while you're talking.
I'm Beth Christensen, and I'm here also because it's very hard to say no to Peg Boss, but also because I have a great appreciation for Clovis history, and it's definitely in my heart, and I've enjoyed teaching about the history of Clovis through the years. And I just want to say from the Historical Society point of view is that we would definitely love to see that building preserved in some way, shape, or form to continue to be a part of Old Town Clovis. Part of our mission as the Historical Society stated in our paperwork is that we want to preserve historical buildings, and we are there to support that preservation and make that a part of what we're doing down there. So we get a lot of visitors coming in to the museum, and just their comments from all over the world and all over the United States is how much they appreciate the feel of Old Town and the buildings that we have preserved and just the feel that's down there. So I would love to see that continued and make that a priority in some way to make that building a part of Old Town to continue into the future.
Thanks, Beth. Mr. Wright, also known as Tommy, go ahead.
Yeah, Tommy, yeah, somebody called me Tommy tonight. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem and council members. My name is Tom Wright. I live at 1564 Buckingham here in Clovis. I'm speaking tonight just as a citizen. Last time I was here, I disavowed 8 other organizations, but as I got to thinking about that process, you can't really disavow all those organizations. And the interaction between organizations, every one of them shapes who I am, and the things I do and say shape the things they do. And so we're all kind of overlapping and interlocked. My challenge wasn't in thinking of things to say, it was thinking in ways to keep this brief and concise. I could talk for an hour easily, and I could start throwing in some old man stories about growing up in Clovis, and we could be here till Thursday. The precedent was set a little earlier tonight. If you want me to go on and go on, I can. I was once advised, by the way, in my first stint at being an elected representative, that if somebody shows up at one of your meetings to complain, you listen politely and thank them for their input. If 2 people complain, you assign it to staff to look into it. If a room full of people show up in matching T-shirts, you're in trouble. Well, looky there. We're not here in anger yet, but I think you could understand and concede that this could get angry and confrontational really quick. And I'm hoping we can avoid that. We can work with these guys. I really like the folks on the chamber. I admire Greg and the things he's done over there. I worked Big Hat Day in a booth just like everybody else because a chamber board member asked. And we make these things happen because we all believe in the same community. But I can guarantee you, and everybody here knows, that if a big giant bulldozer goes over there and starts knocking down that building, it's going to get really ugly and contentious. And those things will last for years and decades and a long time. As great as we love the Clovis Unified School District, there are still scars existing today from things that went on during that process. It was a bitter, brutal process. I can see this happening to the chamber, and perhaps to the city itself. And I think that the situation we're dealing with is more about the concept of commitment than anything else. Chamber of Commerce made a commitment to the Fresno County Board of Supervisors that it would maintain and preserve that historic building. A dear friend of mine was the chamber president who made that. And his name's going to be on one of our petitions when we submit them to somebody. His name is on the wall of the Hall of Fame over at the Heritage Center 4 times for the things he did for this community. Commitments mean a lot to him, and the organizations he represents. The same commitment was repeated to this city council 10 years later. Commitment to an elected body, whether it's Board of Supervisors or City Council, is a commitment to the constituents you serve. So that was a commitment they made to the city of Clovis, the residents who live here. And by participating in that commitment, it's a commitment from the city council to the community and the constituents you serve, that having that agreement with the chamber is something that will be upheld. You can't reward them for not living up to their commitment by giving them the property. It may be legally feasible, legal things happen that none of us like, but I'm not so sure the morality is something any of us want to live with. They agreed to do something, they made a commitment, they got the property because they made a commitment, and here we are fighting to save that building. Last time I was here, there was a developer who wanted to have smaller garage sizes or something to fill in a little pocket development, vacant land. Part of his agreement was that he would complete a section of the Clovis Trail that runs behind that property. If he came to you tomorrow and said, I don't want to do that anymore, would you give him that property? Let him build another row of houses on that trail property? I don't think so. I think that's what, in concept, we're doing with the chamber. You didn't live up to your agreement, so let's give you your property. I think we could all honestly concede that probably this whole thing wasn't handled as well as it should have been. We maybe should have done more to try to preserve, to hear these people before they knew about it and find out how the community felt about it, to make sure the chamber lived up to its agreements. Sooner we correct mistakes, the better, the less damaging they are. And our purpose tonight, my purpose tonight anyway, is to ask that you, as our elected representatives, who endorsed a commitment to the community, direct staff members. You've got Andy and Sean, who are very capable people. Maybe they could go meet with the chamber, the ones who aren't here, and explain to them that this is a difficult situation that we need to resolve. And if they can work into their resolution of that process, preserving that library, saving that library, then we all benefit. And someday we'll all be standing at a ribbon cutting for the brand new, really special library facility instead of squaring off in the streets or wherever we're going to square off. This is not a bunch of old fogies who sit around the rest home and complain about everything. These are good people. When we eventually present our list of supporters, you're going to see the names of a lot of people you recognize, as many as 4, 5, and 6 generations of Clovis residents who have built this community and made it what it is. These are people who put their hearts, their hard work, and their money where their mouths are. I just took a preliminary look at the names on the petitions, and I went over to the Heritage Center and counted 39 of those names have been honored by the Hall of Fame. And that's an honor from this community to people who do great things. One of them has been on the Hall of Fame list for 4 different times over about 4 different decades. These are good people. When all of us get up and talk about Clovis and brag about what Clovis is, the Clovis way of life, we always list the same things. Clovis Schools, Clovis Medical Center, Clovis Rodeo, Clovis Veterans Memorial District, the Clovis Trail System, the Miss Winkle's Pet Adoption Center, the booming downtown, the best high school vocational agricultural center anywhere. That's in Clovis, out at Clovis East. And soon, the Clovis Senior Center. The list goes on and on. San Joaquin College of Law, Tarpe Depot. There are just countless things like that that are success stories that we all take pride in and we all point to when we're talking about what makes Clovis special. And the common feature of every one of these, if they are the best, they're not just a another school. They're not just another senior center. They're going to be the best that you can find anywhere. There's a standard of excellence applied to virtually every one of these projects, and another common feature is that they all evolve the same way. Somebody came up with an idea, shared it with somebody else, got bigger and better, they listened to each other, they made it better, and pretty soon you've got the best school system, you've got the best community medical center, because everybody bought into it, everybody worked for it, all of these guys. And I just wonder and I worry about how long can the passions for Clovis values and the Clovis way of life be expected to persist if we degrade the concept of commitment? If we reward those who fail to meet their commitments, how many more commitments are we going to get? I attended the groundbreaking ceremonies for the new senior center, and you honored a special Clovis family here who made a significant contribution to that center. They got to sit in a little special seat. I think they had their own easy up for shade. The guy you honored that day drove our float in the rodeo parade. You really want to tangle with people like that? One of the first names on our petition is a name that created the very classy bistro at the Clovis Medical Center. If you want to go get a good meal at a good price, you go there, even if you drive out there from down here some Friday night instead of going to a restaurant. The name of that bistro is one of the first names on our petition. The agricultural center that I talked about out at Clovis East bears the name of the McFarland family. Sarah Miller's maiden name was McFarland. She's carrying on a family tradition of service that has long been recognized and appreciated in this community. Good people, good track records. Once again, we're not here just to complain and leave. We ask you to take the lead in approaching the Chamber of Commerce and asking them to take another look at this. We expect that we will be called upon to help accomplish whatever they come up with, as long as it doesn't include tearing down that building. And we will live up to that commitment. That's what these people do. And like I said, we hope that one day all of us will be standing together at the ribbon cutting for the really nice new renovated Clovis Library or Carnegie Library building, and not continuing an argument ad infinitum. One other thing
You're going to have like 3 people yield their 5 minutes to you.
Yeah, I know. I told you I get to talk till Thursday.
No, you
Something
can't.
else that concerns me a little bit, and maybe the chamber gets in its own little rooms and just agrees with each other and don't hear the kind of input that they may need. But I've been hearing Paul talk about an event center as part of their plans. That's okay, I guess. But think about that. Somebody who comes to an event at that location is going to park their cars in front of the Classic Catering. They're going to walk by the event center at the 559 and pass a couple of restaurants who depend on income from people coming here for events and holding gatherings. Chamber's mission statement says they advocate for businesses. I don't think it says they compete with businesses, and I wonder if that's a road they want to go down to, but that's a discussion we could have with the Chamber. I appreciate your hearing me, and I hope you listen and consider who you're talking to and who's talking to you, and I hope the Chamber does too, because we're taking this seriously.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Is there anyone else? I know all of you that are in shirts with signs, and those of you maybe that don't have shirts and signs back there are here in support of this idea. So you are all welcome to speak. I beg of you not to. No, I'm just kidding. Am I kidding? I'm actually not kidding. You're welcome to speak if you'd like. If you have something to add that you didn't hear from Sari or Tom or anyone else wanting to comment. But it is early in the process, and this was really just a, fact finding and see what's out there. So anyone else want to comment on this? You are more than welcome. Greg, do you want to say anything, or are you just here to listen too? Just here to listen. And I think for sure what you hear is, we support, the Chamber is a really important part of Clovis too, so it's not like, we're just trying to find that sort of common ground space, I think. So I think that's what I hope you take away from this for sure. All right, Mr. Schmidtkamp, any comments? No? Need a t-shirt? Probably. All right. So any other public comment from folks in the audience here tonight? Nope.
One of the few people that can tell you no.
I know, and I love that he actually did what I said. That is so awesome. Get this on camera.
William Smith Camp, 1564 North Middleburg Lane, Clovis, California. I was president of the chamber back in 1978, and I know how tough it is to struggle to make ends meet with the city, and you folks helped us quite a bit, with quite a bit of money. And I think there's plenty of ways that the chamber and the group that's here and the city can make this work. I think I didn't know anything about it until I got asked to make a float, for crying out loud. But I think I did learn how to read Dr. Seuss' Cat in the Hat in that wonderful building. So I think it was in the basement. So I just think that there's plenty of support. Just need to open up the dialogue a little bit, and we'll make it all happen. So thank you.
Thanks, Bill. Any other comments? Anybody on the web wanting to weigh in?
Yes, I had one question from Felina Merahart. Felina, you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Me?
Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to know that if the chamber gives the building back, then what does the group that was just speaking plan to do with the building if that happens? Is it going to be renovated by the city, or is it going to be renovated by private citizens?
There's hasn't been any discussion regarding the building coming back to the city or any other group being able to step up and take care of the building in its current form. So that'd be something part of the discussion going forward that could be had.
No. Okay, hold on. Let's make sure we get Felina's question answered. So, Felina, did you hear that?
I did not.
Oh, I think the answer was that there isn't any discussion at this point of the city taking the building back or reusing it or investing it or citizens taking it back and investing in it. So those would be all kind of down the road questions if they were to come up. So I think it's a little too early in the conversation for that quite yet.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for weighing in. Okay.
I'll take
I told Bill that he had to stand up, and I told you no, and you came forward. What is wrong with this?
You got to take control of this meeting.
I know. What is wrong with me? Okay, 30 seconds, go.
I just want to say that regarding somebody taking over the building for historical preservation purposes, there has been an offer made to the chamber to buy that. Wasn't the best offer they could have gotten, and it was expected that they would negotiate, and they said, no, we're not going to take that ridiculous offer, and went away. But there is an agency here in town that was interested in purchasing that if it was given back to the city. I don't imagine that that would be the chamber's position or that they would want to, because they need what they need, but those possibilities do exist.
Yeah, I think there's lots of possibilities. Sarah, you want to say one more thing, because now I'm totally out of control?
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
I think you can see from the enthusiasm here that fundraising to restore this building would be not that challenging. And I've had discussions with various people on the council about what a key building this could be for downtown Clovis put to the proper use. I'm really not sure we need more conference space on Pulaski Avenue, but I wanted to just point out when Paula Lodgin said the price may be as high as $3 million, that wasn't to restore this building. That was to build this conference space behind the building, which it's going to cost a lot of money to take it down and put up a new building anyway, so don't be misled by the $3 million. But we tend... This is what I like to say. You know, we live in a hot, dry area. When I went to school in Claremont, they brought the Dead Sea Scrolls to Claremont to study them because our climate is so conducive to preserving old things. So do you think when they go to the Louvre and they see some mold, they go, well, this building's got to come down, let's get a new one? And do you think in Washington, D.C. and Boston, Massachusetts, they tear down their old buildings because maybe they have a little mold or maybe the bathroom's old? But what do we do in California? We tear down the courthouse. We tear down the Carnegie Library in Fresno. Let us not do that here in Clovis. We can save this building, and it will not cost this much, and these people will raise some money.
Thanks, Sarah.
I appreciate it.
All right. I will close the public comment at this point, and I will note the one letter that we do have, and it is from Allison Lee McFarland, asking that we save the library. So we will put that into the record. I'll bring it back to council. Any closing comments on this receive and file item only?
Yeah, if you don't mind. So, a couple of errors were made on the part of the city of Clovis. It is striking to me sometimes when we make an error, because I think we're so perfect up here. But when we did not file the reversionary interest that was in place with the county recorder, that created a problem that later had to be addressed in 2018. And in 2018, we passed a resolution which basically said, because of the issues associated with the reversionary interest and all of the money that the Clovis Chamber of Commerce has put into the building, we basically are giving you this building without the reversionary interest in place. And so certainly that first mistake about the reversionary interest not being recorded was a problem. The 2018, I was up here, Lynn was up here, Jose was up here. My name is signed to that resolution, which basically grants their request, which was to eliminate the reversionary interest. But there is a letter from Greg Newman, and I'm not saying this to call more attention to Greg. Poor guy's as far in the corner as he could possibly be.
It slouched down a long way, getting shorter and shorter as the meeting goes on.
But there was a kind of maybe to Tommy's point, there was an explanation that was given as to why the chamber was making this request, and it had a lot to do with the costs associated with getting that building back up to speed. And here's what a couple of paragraphs say. It says, related to the reversionary interest agreement, it says, should the agreement stay in place and the Clovis Chamber decides to remodel the building, there are several issues that may arise which could negatively affect the city of Clovis. Any construction projects for the building may trigger the requirement of using prevailing wage, which would make the project unaffordable. Secondly, should an ADA lawsuit be filed against the property, then the city of Clovis could be named in the lawsuit and carry financial responsibility. So when I went through this letter, there did appear to be an indication, at least, that the place was not going to be torn down, but that because there was a reversionary interest, it sort of clouded the title. So if there was to be a loan taken against the building, that was going to be problematic. So we excuse or eliminate that reversionary interest. It gives them free opportunity to get the money necessary, perhaps through a mortgage, in order to take advantage of that benefit so that they can remodel the building or engage in some construction projects for the building. So in 2018, I mean, it appears as though the commitment was that this reversionary interest being eliminated was for the benefit of the chamber so that they could reinvest in the construction or new construction of that same building, not tear the building down, but have the building have some additional components to it. And then also any remodeling that would be taking place of that building. So anyway, Greg, I know you don't want to say anything, and I appreciate that. And I know that you have a great deal of goodwill with this council as well as with the community. There are, obviously there are some there are some feelings that are hurt even at this early stage. They're running pretty high. Just know that, at least from my perspective, and I can't speak for all of the council in 2018, our understanding was that we were eliminating that reversionary interest so that you guys could remodel or restore, that building, not so that you could tear it down. So, to change it now, would be certainly disheartening, to us. And we count the chamber certainly as friends, and friends don't do that to friends. So, those are my comments. Thanks.
Thanks, Bob. Fawn?
You know, when it's this early and there's already a lot of angst and distrust, I think we need to do it better. When I look at the decision that was made in 2018, I saw it as a legal decision. This happens a lot in young Hmong families that come. The money to buy the home is the parents because they earned it on the farm, but they had no legal credit, so they put it into the son to go buy it. So on paper, legally, they can own the home. The son can legally go sell it and keep all the proceeds as the house goes up. But the right thing to do is you don't do that because that's your mom, right, who earn and sweat and all that. So legally, yes, we gave it to you so we can be clear of it. But the understanding is that you restore it, you do it so that way we protect the citizens, so that way we kind of keep tax dollars less and less out of it. That's the way I understand it. You know, history is important, and someone newer like me, 20-something years, I call that new. You know, many of you are fourth, fifth generation Clovis citizens. And, you know, if you forget where you come from, kind of like a person who gets hit and they lose their memory, we call that person lost, right? He's lost, you know, doesn't know who he is. And we can't do that. We forget these buildings, we forget this tree, we forget this street, we forget the families who built Clovis. We're just lost. We're not Clovis citizens anymore. We're just lost people who just go about shopping and eating here. And so when we have a chance to remember who we are, we must work hard to do that. I know that the chamber, you know, you have your mission, you have your you know, what you need to do. But your membership are these citizens, and they need to remember where they come from. And they must remember that they can't be lost in what they do, because we're going to intermix all the time. And so I think that is important in what we're going through here. I don't know what role we can play and what role we should play, but I think there needs to be someone or something to bring everyone together, because listening to the group, I hear that they're willing to fundraise, they're willing to do things as long as we just preserve the building. And I think that is very open of the committee or the preservation committee here to do that. On the note in which Councilmember Ashbeck brought about with regards to the Historical Preservation Commission, I think maybe it is time for us to also start to explore that, because this will start to come up more and more. Because as the original citizens of Clovis shrink year after year, we need your wisdom, your knowledge, and your history to show us what is historical, what do we need to preserve, what can we tell our children, and they can tell their children about Clovis, so that way they always remember what Clovis is and what Clovis will be as we move forward. And if the staff can start exploring that also with those citizens who are interested, I think that is also something in which we can start to look at, to bring back, to work that committee or that commission the Clovis way. You know, we don't need to do it like how the county does it or how Fresno City does it. We can do it how we want to, and with this type of citizens that we have here, we'll do it better than them anyway. That's the confidence I have in our citizens. So those are my thoughts.
Thanks, Juan. So I just think to echo that, I'll hereby anoint all of you as our first Historical Preservation Committee. I don't have any power to do that, by the way, but I do think it's the right time, and maybe this is an opportunity. And I do have confidence that the thing that we all share is we love this community. So when you start there, not all the reasons why we can't agree on this or that, but I think between the city might play some kind of a mediation role, but between all of you and the chamber and the Historical Society, that's the thing we share, is we love Clovis. And I always said what makes Clovis different is people understand the roots of Clovis. I don't want to live in a place where kids think the only place you gather is the Starbucks at Clovis and Shaw or whatever. That to me is like not it about what Clovis is. So I think holding on to the things that make us different are good for business and are good for community goodwill and are good for our schools. So I do think we all share that. I know Greg, I know the chamber shares that as well. So I just think we probably just need to get in a room with whatever role the city is comfortable playing as a mediator, or we'll put the architect in the middle, I don't know. But trying to find a way, what's that common ground about that? Because I think what does make Clovis is holding on to why we're here. Otherwise, we're just going to be another suburb, and I don't want to live in another suburb. But I'm going to go on hot, dry climates are good for old people, because that could be good for me. Is that what you said? So, all right, with that, we thank you for coming, all of you that love Clovis and have loved it for generations, and some of us love it quite a little bit less. We haven't been here for 5 generations, but, and Greg, we love you too. Not too, also. Yeah, but, no, I'm kidding. We love you too. We'll find a common ground in here, because it's in here. The solution is in here, I'm confident. So thank you to all for coming, and keep us posted. And if the city can play a role in that mediation or coming together, I think we can find a way to navigate that as well. So thank you, and appreciate you all being here, and we meet every Monday at 6 o'clock, so come back anytime. Thank you so much. Andy, thank you for putting that staff report together. All right, our next item is item number 15, a request to adopt a resolution approving the initiation of an application to amend the general plan and the Loma Vista specific plan with regard to street alignments, land use patterns, and master plan boundaries for the area designated as the Eastern Village within the Loma Vista specific plan. And the item will be brought to us by Dave Merchant, the city planner, after he turns down the air conditioner. It is so cold in here. Yeah. Thanks, Carol. See you soon. Thanks, Carol. All right, Dave.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem and members of the council. As you noted, this item is a request to initiate a general plan amendment and a specific plan amendment. As opposed to the full consideration of these kinds of applications, tonight's discussion is not a question of whether the general plan and specific plan should be approved. This is really a question of whether the amendments should be considered as a city-initiated project.
Do you have any questions? That's what you should say. We go, well, I don't know, do we? Bob, what do you say?
Something about how this is not a general plan. This is a request to something.
That was pretty good, yeah. I'd go with that. So the point here is that we're not asking you to vote on the merits of the application. We're just as the question as to whether this should be a city-initiated led project, or if you don't feel that way, this would go back to the owners and the development community, and if it's important enough to them, then they could bring it forward. So ultimately, staff's recommendation to you is that this should be a city-initiated project, and I'll go and just to a little bit of background on that before we wrap it up. So there are really 3 items quickly. One is to revise the street patterns to get rid of some of the curvilinear alignments in this part of the Loma Vista specific plan. The second part would be to adjust land use patterns so that they would match the new street patterns. And the third is to modify the master plan requirements for this portion of Loma Vista, which is called the Eastern Village, so that the Eastern Village master plan could be completed in basically 2 phases instead of in a single phase. So again, in this part of Loma Vista, the layout is characterized by curvilinear alignments for Loma Vista Parkway, Gettysburg Avenue, and the Thompson Avenue extension. Let's see if I can get this to work. So Gettysburg is the big loop here that extends down. Gettysburg is the internal loop. And then the Thompson extension is this connecting street, which heads north just to Shaw Avenue, which is just off the graphic here. So the land use patterns that are oriented around those curvilinear streets basically define what the densities and land uses are for this area. And pretty clearly from that map, most of the changes in land use designations occur at the street alignments. So you can also call the land use pattern as maybe curvilinear. So I guess one of the important points is to say that the design and functionality of these curvilinear alignments is still desirable. There's nothing wrong with these alignments. We didn't make a mistake when we created them. And really, if we had found that the build-out of the planning area with these features wasn't so difficult, we wouldn't be here suggesting that you considered changing them. We kind of like them. They add value to the community. What we found, though, as this part of the Loma Vista, particularly this area up here that's got a lot of residentially designated area, as that area becomes ripe for development, the development community and the owners have identified these curvilinear alignments as constraints that are really slowing down their ability to move in to this part of Loma Vista. The curvilinear alignments don't correlate with parcel boundaries. So parcel boundaries are rectangular and square. They've got, for the most part, 90-degree angles. And when we have these curvilinear alignments, we found that involvement by multiple properties and multiple owners is often required when it comes to developing a single parcel. And there can be disproportionate opportunities and impacts associated with dealing with that street and frontage, both in terms of the dedicating of the right-of-ways as well as the building out of the frontages. Some properties have a ton of street frontage, like the parcel shown in black here on this graphic, with other adjacent parcels may not have any street frontage to deal with. The land use patterns that are oriented around those curvilinear streets, because they follow these curvilinear alignments, has the effect of creating multiple land use designations on an individual property. So again, with the graphics shown here, with the property lined in black, there are 4 different land use designations involved on a single property. And while that in and of itself isn't necessarily a problem, the effect that it has is when that owner, when the current owner, which is the case in most of these instances, is ready to sell to somebody who wants to build, that developer is looking to build generally a product or a kind of product. And it's difficult to build a cohesive project when you've got 4 different general plan designations that you're trying to make general plan conformity findings with. So it's not impossible, it just adds a constraint that is proven to slow down development. To go back here a little bit, these constraints aren't new to the city of Clovis or to development in general. City had the same dilemma when it dealt with the community centers north and south master plan in Loma Vista, which is just a little bit west of here. I'll show you that graphic here in a minute. And in that case, we looked at the same constraints and ended up squaring off those street alignments for the community centers north and south master plan. It's unfortunate when large blocks of single ownership will support these curvilinear alignments because a single entity can control the build out and the right-of-way dedication. Because the streets add visual interest, they tend to support some features that you don't necessarily get with traditional grids. But when it comes to building them out with relatively small parcels, or at least lots of mixed ownerships, it has proven to be an issue. So as we talk to the property owners and the folks that were looking to develop here, there was a general consensus that a conventional grid, or something at least that incorporated grid-like features, was desirable. There wasn't any opposition to moving forward. We ended up identifying what you see on your screen here as a working concept for a revised layout. It has those traditional grid-like features, but it does maintain the flow of traffic really from the north to the south through the use of roundabouts, which were already present in this area to some degree, and we would use roundabouts to keep traffic flowing. The land use patterns would also be reoriented. So what's shown here on the screen is a concept of how we end up with more grid-like land use patterns that don't exactly match individual parcel boundaries, but end up allowing more cohesively designed projects because you don't have quite so many oddly mixed land use designations floating across properties. And one of the things that is important for this area is to maintain the opportunity for a pedestrian-focused community center which is this area here, this kind of purpley area, which is one of the key features of what's called the Eastern Village of Loma Vista. So it is important to note that this is a conceptual layout, and it's just preliminary at this point. What ultimately comes back to you probably will look something like this, but this isn't the final alignment. One of the items that came out, probably the key item that came out of the meeting with the neighbors and owners in this area, is the need to pay close attention to what happens with the future development of the Sanger Unified Campus, which is about a 50-acre area, roughly in the area that's shaded red on the screen. Schools, as you know, can drive traffic patterns and do odd things during peak hours. And the decision to revisit the circulation system creates an opportunity to look closely at how a school could play into that and maybe reconsider how access to that piece is provided. Obviously, well, maybe not obviously, but the Sanger Unified came in and purchased that property well after the original plan was developed. So we talked about the street alignments, we talked about the associated land use patterns. The third item that would be included in a request if the council chooses to initiate it is to take a look at the Loma Vista master plan requirements. So the graphic on this slide is meant to show that there are 4 areas in the Loma Vista specific plan that require master plans. There are the community centers north and south, as I just mentioned to you. This is an example of some curvilinear alignments that were built in, kind of baked into the original concept. Those have all been kind of re-gridded into a more traditional street pattern since that graphic was prepared. But the master plans for community center north and south have been prepared. They were actually led by the city in an effort a handful of years ago with participation from the property owners in the area. The Gettysburg-Ashland master plan is actually set to come before you probably in June, possibly July. So we're making our way through that process. And is Sari still here? Sari's still here. So that's it's the McFarland owned ranch. And then the last of the master plan areas is the Eastern Village, and that's really the one that we're talking about this evening. And so the master plans in Loma Vista are meant to require that the work done on design and character and quality and trails and all of those things, that work is done before individual development projects are approved. And that's really been the case with the 2 other master plans that have been done. And the one, obviously, what now wants to be the Home Place master plan, which is the Gettysburg-Ashland. There is development that is running just behind that master planning process. In staff's observation, the size and complexity of the Eastern Village lends itself towards taking the master planning work in a couple of different phases instead of doing all the master plan in a single lump. That's for a couple of reasons. One, it's by far the largest of the master planning areas as originally conceived. I think there are somewhere around 18 or 19 owners within that area that would need to be coordinated. But probably the biggest factor that we think would support separating out the master plan areas is that the residential area that's mostly this yellow area in here, that area is, at this point, ready to go. The owners and the development community have identified that as something where there's enough steam going to start that master planning work right now. The remainder of the Eastern Village, which is primarily, at least mostly characterized by this mixed-use business campus, any development, particularly the employment-generating development in this area, is much further into the future. Even the Sanger Unified campus, Sanger Unified has not, at this point, been able to define what kind of campus they would be looking at, what its features would be, what its layout will be. They're probably even a few years out from making those decisions, at least according to the last discussion that we had with them. So really because a part of the area is ready for master planning, and another part is probably at least a couple of years out from being at a point where the owners would engage in the process to spend money to go through that process. We think it probably makes makes sense to maybe bifurcate the boundary and allow a portion to go forward sooner rather than later. So with that, staff is recommending the adoption of a resolution to initiate the general plan and specific plan amendments as described. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Dave. I was listening to 90% of it. Just to be clear, the discussion you want from the council is whether we should be the initiator of these changes versus the development community. Do you want us to comment on, gee, don't think that street's right or wish that street was different, or is that going to come back just at some point in the future?
The latter, yeah. This is a request just to initiate the process.
The process,
as a city
and we'll
process.
have a chance to weigh in on the specifics.
Correct.
Okay, all right. I just don't want to get too far down the, I wish Locan went a different direction or some of that. That's not the conversation for tonight.
Yeah,
No.
I think you accurately said that, but what I would say is if you hate it, then now's a good time to
Okay.
tell us that you hate it, because
Okay.
we just as soon avoid
Get some feedback
going down the
generally.
wrong, yeah.
Okay, all right, thanks. Are there any questions for staff? Vaughn?
Yes. Dave, will it incur additional costs and studies, stuff like, will it change infrastructure costs or planning that we have? And the second is, will it require like a new EIR that may be needed or generated because we've changed it? Let's get those two first.
Yeah, I think the way that we have viewed this thus far is it doesn't add any new requirements that aren't already in place. So we'll still have to comply with CEQA, obviously, and there will still need to be master plans done. The intent is to make this a more streamlined process versus a more difficult process.
And will it keep the same amount of acreage for the land use that is currently here? So
yeah,
if it was 1,000 for multifamily, it'll still be 1,000 acres for multifamily. Are we changing any of that?
That's a great question, and the intent is to do exactly what you said, to keep the acreages just about as exact as we could between existing and future. There are some state laws that would make sure that we don't reduce the residential capacity. And obviously, if we were to increase the residential capacity to any significant degree, then it would affect it environmentally. So we'd want to avoid that too.
And does it affect the current study that we're doing with VMT if we change this at all? Because we're doing an EIR with VMT EIR study to help with VMT. So does this change it where we have to go back and do it again, or not really?
No, we have not identified any impacts in that regard.
Okay. And you said that in the original there were 18, 19 owners. So I'm assuming they already seen this and they are expecting this for their, either they selling it and or developing it themselves in the future. Will their input come later after we initiate, or did you already kind of talk with the 18, 19 owners and they are also good with the changing?
Yes, we did have a neighborhood meeting with the owners within this area, and there were no objections to proceeding in this course. There was some that were very interested because it really allowed them to be able to sell their property faster and move forward. In fact, there were some that were represented by the potential buyer, and there were no objections here. We would engage them again through the process to make sure that there were no new concerns, that we'd addressed any issues that were outstanding.
And it will, I'm assuming it will flow sort of seamlessly with, I guess you called it the home place master plan and the north-south. So in other words, what we're planning, because I think they may have done it with this vision, their master plans. And so how does it, all that work together, or it won't affect their master plans as much because this master plan potentially will come in the future, even though it won't be curved streets, it'll be more grid streets. Can you help with
Yeah, that's another great question. Probably the biggest issue is that the home place on this graphic, the home place master plan will cover this area generally here. There's, right kind of in this vicinity is where the two, master plans and the street alignment configuration would intersect. And there will be a little bit of work done before the home place master plan gets finalized to make sure that we didn't, get crossways on the design where one master plan assumed one configuration and didn't incorporate the revisions that we're talking about.
Okay. And lastly is, then how does that work with also our parks and trails? Because it's changing everything, so how do we sort of keep it where all these new plans will have something which the city really likes, so that way there's some cohesion where I'm going from home place, here's the new one, or I just don't want it to affect that too much. I don't know how much we planned already for this area, or is that something we're going to study only at the master plan level and make it all connect then?
Yes and yes. That's not yes and no, but yes and yes. We would address the trail configurations to the extent that they follow any of the existing street alignments, or that we create any new trail intersections with the street alignments. We would look at that as part of the general plan specific plan amendment process to make sure that we didn't create any new conflicts. The more detailed trail planning in terms of what the sections look like and the amenities in the trails and so forth, that happens at the master planning stage.
And since it's Loma Vista, if we're going back to the grid, will it go back to sort of the four corners coming to a park in the middle? Or does that not apply, or because this never had it, because it was a curved? Because, I live in Loma Vista, so I'm used to, I love the trails where they all kind of go into the middle and they connect to the next neighborhood. And so, is it too early to ask that?
No, it's not too early. Those are good questions. I think that the gateways and the monuments are probably not going to be affected by the internal changes, but that's something that we'll make sure to take a look at, because honestly, I'm not positive of my answer, and we want to have that information for you as part of any changes that we make.
Because I remember when we were doing the southeast, a lot of the complaint was that took a lot of land away from the development because we had those trail systems. But the neighborhoods love it. This, I don't know what the trail requirements are. Okay, it may not have that where every one of those little curved loops has a trail system. So in other words, they may have had be able to build more homes even though it's a curved street. But if we move it to the other way, if those other rules apply to this, there's, the developer who wants it may go, oh, well, we changed it, but now we lost more homes anyway.
Right.
And it just, I think we need to really, really be on top of that, so that way we get what we want and keep what we want in Loma Vista, those big, high level things where trails are important, neighborhood, the streets, the monuments at the corners, so that way you're going into a neighborhood. I just hope we look at all that as well.
Excellent points.
Okay.
Bob?
Thank you. So I'm not persuaded. Your third whereas says the development community has identified the curvilinear streets and the land use patterns that are based on those streets as constraints to development. That's what we do. As part of our police agency responsibilities, we place constraints on development because we want to make sure that the community that is built is one that is going to be safe. Now, I appreciate the idea of having the roundabouts as a traffic calming measure. However, I believe the curvilinear streets also act as a traffic calming measure. So the the concepts that, you know, you have outlined as to, you know, why these constraints may be problematic, I hear, but I don't, I'm not persuaded that they are impossible to overcome, particularly when we are trying to consider whether we want to stick to the agreement that we made, as to, you know, how we want this area developed out. And those landowners, if they're the ones who believe that these changes need to take place as opposed to the developers, you know, there was a time for them, in my mind, to say, hey, we don't like these curvilinear streets. Heck, there was a time for the developers to say we don't like those curvilinear streets, and that was at the time that we approved the Loma Vista plan. So I'm not, I don't know that these are undue constraints on development. I'm of the opinion that development is going to continue in the city of Clovis, despite the curvilinear streets. There may be a question of fairness as to property values for one parcel over the other because of the amount of frontage that's on there, but we make decisions that impact property values on a regular basis. I have concerns that as, you know, we start to, you know, continue to carve out what used to be a really, I say used to be, it still is a beautiful plan for that Loma Vista community. We are gonna, if we're not careful, we're just gonna end up like with north, south, east, west grids. Our trails are gonna become sidewalks. And I'm worried already about a couple of things as I look at this. Is at some point they're gonna say, well, the below grade crossing in Shaw Avenue that is, you know, been in the plan for a while is not practical. It's too constraining from a fiscal perspective. And so we're going to give that up as well. What we'll have left is that, you know, that village green, which is great, and I'm thankful to have it. But there was more that was promised beyond just that village green. So I have some concerns. And I don't want us to be a party to kind of tearing down what is a really good plan. Also, as I look at these curvilinear streets, I've noticed that we have adopted some curvilinear streets on the Heritage Grove area. So once we go ahead and say, yeah, you know, we don't like curvilinear streets, we're going to go ahead and make those changes. You know, we sort of already set a precedent, I guess you can say, when right around where the firehouse is, we eliminated those curvilinear streets and kind of went to a more traditional grid, eliminated trails and went with sidewalks. When we see, or when the development community may see that we're, you know, doing that, not just where the firehouse was, but also here, they're going to say, well, you know, the Heritage Grove area has curvilinear streets. You guys eliminated them in Loma Vista. You should be able to eliminate them in Heritage Grove because it's just a lot easier to develop when everything's on an east, west, north, south grid. No doubt that that's true, but that's not what we're here to do. In my view, we're here to kind of lay out a plan that is predictable and reliable for the community that chooses to purchase their homes there, and for the landowners, so they have an expectation of how their property is going to be used should they choose to sell it. So at least at this point, I'm not persuaded that we should be a party to initiating these changes.
I actually agree with Bob. I think he was reading off my notes here. I think there's a couple of things. I think that changes are possible because people change. They come and ask for changes regularly. So it isn't like we've never made a change to a specific plan or a general plan. So I don't think the changes are off the table. I do think what's at risk here is that spirit of the Loma Vista plan. And I worry that I think the grid pattern that you showed is 180 degrees from this vision. Like there has to be something in the middle, and I was sensitive to the language about constraints to development. Is there something in the affirmative? We're trying to create a city that's going to outlast us in 50 years from now. So concerning development today, okay, but what's the flip side of that, right? So I'm looking for something affirmative. It's a little bit like you want a 1,700 square foot lot. I need more than a trash can. You want to change this out. I need more than just a grid pattern, because Bob's right, we will become just a suburb, and this won't feel that we are upholding that promise of the village. So I'm sort of, I think, somewhere in the middle of these two perspectives, but I'm not persuaded that we need to be the owners of this. People can ask us to change, that's what they do, and that's how that works, and so I think that makes sense to me. I also think that our trails will become sidewalks, and I get that the original, diagonal and sort of crisscross that in the original plan maybe was too hard, but in parts of the southeast, it's really beautiful. I wish I lived in that neighborhood, but I don't, and so I think I'm not quite ready to give that up yet. We haven't seen enough of that. And my last point on the master plan, I still think it's one master plan. Might be two phases, but I think when we start parceling out master plans, they're not really master plans. They're just a little, this little quarter section to do that. So I'm not persuaded either on, not that we would never entertain something different, but that I don't think the city should be the one to say, okay, here's the grid pattern, go ahead and build that. I don't think that's our obligation to the citizens, is to let developers paint their picture for us that upholds the specific plan, and then we can weigh in on that. So that would be my sense at this point. All right. If there's nothing else for staff, I'll open the public portion. Wow, twice in one night.
Costume change.
I know, you did take off your T-shirt. I was going to comment on that, like, really? Different Sherry Miller. Or same Sarah Miller, different outfit. It's impressive. Will you push your on button, Sarah? Will you push the on button on the microphone? Thanks.
But it only says it like this big.
I know. That button. Press that button.
I stumbled onto this item because of the Carnegie. And on this map, I couldn't tell you what percentage, but a very large percentage of this land is owned by myself and my brother and sister. So I was quite shocked that I didn't know this was on the agenda. So I am assured by very competent and, excellent city staff that this is not the decision of how it's going to look. But I do have a little background in who brought this and why. And just because a developer says, well, I'm here now, thank you for your general plan and your specific plan and your landowners and all the money that's gone into bringing you here, but I'm here now to fix this for you. And I really noticed on your website what an excellent job you do of being transparent and saying, the first half of your agenda is how can the public participate here? And I do not consider this process transparent. I was shocked, but I'm not concerned especially not concerned after hearing your wonderful comments, but I think that some changes may need to be made because of land use, dice that have been cast. And I want to speak in support of Singer Unified, who had the vision to come here early, buy land, and their idea is to create a division of Singer Unified that takes in this wonderful school, Fairmont School, where my kids went to school, goes all the way to 8th grade. We worried about that when my daughter was in kindergarten. Now she has a daughter who's graduated from kindergarten, and so it still goes to 8th grade, and they have the wonderful Fairmont Farm project there, and Quail Lake has an actual, fantastic school. They showed me the map. I mean, people come from Madera, they come from far and wide to come to that school. But those kids are kind of lost because when they get to middle school and high school age, they would have to go all the way into Sanger. And so what Sanger was concerned about is they would lose their students to Clovis Unified. Now, I think you know that my dad hired Floyd Buchanan to come to Clovis, and he was very disappointed when Evan went to Fairmont. But we can have two wonderful school districts in Clovis, and we do. And if you had looked sometime in the past, you would say, well, that's too bad it's not Clovis. And there's still some developers sawing that old saw because they don't realize this is a new millennium. This is 2022, and Singer has a great plan here to build a high school for those schools and a new elementary school, and it won't have all the bells and whistles. So if kids want to play football, they'll be playing it someplace else. But I think, and it ties in with that whole environmental studies of the Quail Lake School. And I remember when we built the water reuse facility that we talked about an educational component to that, which is going to be sorely needed. And so I think that there's an opportunity to do something really great over there. When they made the grid, they left it so that the school district land didn't meet the street. So I'm not sure what happens in that area. But so obviously the thoughts about this were for the benefit of someone building houses. And I understand completely we need people to build houses, but I don't need to say much more than what you've already said. Is we make commitments in Clovis, such as our last discussion, and we keep our commitments. Thank you.
Thanks, Jerry. Other comments on this item?
Good evening. Sorry, Semi. So we've been looking in this area for several years. And by the way, I love curvilinear streets. We try to put them in some of our neighborhoods. Matter of fact, I think the first one in a planned development in Clovis was at DeVille, which we designed, developed, and built around 1999, 2000. So there's a great place for them inside neighborhoods. Several things we learned from those was the sight line. So it's less safe to cross the street unless you have enough sight line. So we actually recently developed another one in Fresno, same design, but we fixed that issue so it's not as curvilinear because crossing of the street around the bends becomes a lot more dangerous. But in terms of the biggest challenge here with this design, it looks really good on paper. From aerial view, it looks really good. The biggest challenge is actually Sanger Unified. Their property is they own the business park and a high density. So the part of that brown is on their property. And actually, the Loma Vista Drive goes smack through, not the middle of their property, but a majority of their property gets bifurcated by Loma Vista Drive. So that's the biggest challenge. Land use and the parcels don't line up. And like Bob, Councilmember Whalen, you said, well, 20 years ago they had a chance to speak up. I don't know if the Sanger Unified recently purchased that from the McFarlands. So they have an issue. Unless if they build multifamily on their property, high-density multifamily, they won't comply. So they either got to sell their property, portion of their property, and also figure out what to do with Loma Vista Drive, because Loma Vista Drive is going to go through their property. So that's a challenge. Those are the issues that, in my opinion, whether we build, actually, I'm not in that area. We're, closer to where the yellow is. Whether they build or somebody else builds, that issue needs to be addressed. And if it's not cleaned up, I think Dave talked about it, you have 4 different land uses on one parcel. And then on top of that, you have a lot of odd-shaped parcels. So if Sanger Unified has to comply with that, they have to get into the apartment business, and they have to build Loma Vista Parkway through their campus. So that's the challenge. And they're not interested in buying more land. I've talked to them. We've been talking to them for the last 2 years. We were hoping they could sell their bond so they could build that school, but it looks like it's 10 years out because they don't have any money to build it. They're building another high school, I think it's off of Jensen and Fowler area. So That's their challenge. And they go, okay, we don't have any more money to buy more property. What do we do? So we've met with them multiple times, and that's really how this initiated. How do we deal with Sanger Unified? How does that alignment work? So we approached the city of Clovis and said, okay, that grid looks really good on paper, but actually when you go to build it, it creates all these unintended consequences. So I like curvilinear streets. As a matter of fact, the one we're designing, we're building it right now. It's in West Fresno. It's got a massive 36-foot trail attached to it, which is going to be really attractive. That will kind of come at a series of trails, which end up at a little over 2-acre park, which will be very unique for that part of town. But we believe this could be a challenge. That's one. Number two, you have a master plan that it encompasses, I don't know how many acres it is, 300 or 400 acres. And part of it, I think, as Dave outlined, I mean, most of the pink is business park, and that probably is years away from development. It's not developable today. As a developer, I can tell you I wouldn't put an office complex on the very edge of town. It's by definition, office complexes need to be close to other amenities and other offices. Palm Bluffs is probably a great example in Fresno. Copper River is another example of where not to put an office because it's so far out. And we have some office property in that project. So some of this property is this village is ready to be developed over the next few years. Balance of it is probably 10 to 15 years out. So, can we phase that? So we do one master plan, but phase one. We get phase one out, so actually that development can get off the ground, which is on the Shaw Avenue side, the yellow and some of the lighter orange. And knowing the balance of the business park, it's, years out. I recently talked to the Sanger Unified team, this was about a month ago, and then they think they could be about 10 years out. And when they're ready to build, they know that circulation does not work. Can you put that, show the map where the Sanger Unified owns the property? Do you have it where it's on the existing right-of-way? So if you can just outline it, there we go. Does it go all the way out to McCall? Okay. So part of the property is business park, and part of it is high-density multifamily, and Loma Vista Drive goes through it. One of the other property owners, and I don't know if they're here tonight or not, is the pink on the top right, and they go, how do we have access? Because that design landlocks us. We can't go through McCall, and I think they can only have one access on Shaw. So they want to see a different grid that does not landlock their property. So I think it's a church property, yeah. Okay.
Is that it?
That's it.
Thank you.
If any questions, be glad to. We deal with this stuff. We work with designs. I mean, it looks, again, really good. It looks really good, but it's as you go to develop. So we try to have curvilinear streets within. Actually, even the latest DeVille that just got finished on the east side of Temperance. If you drive through there, you'll see one of the streets. Actually, we put a little S curve in it just to create more interest, so you're not just going down a straight line. Yeah. So it costs a little bit more, but it's a lot more attractive. And then your sidewalk also meanders around. So we do that internally to make it make it more appealing. The biggest challenge here is the land use. as it comes to, different ownership and different parcels.
Thanks, Daria. Question?
Question, Darius. So is the issue because there are multiple owners, so one owner may have all the frontage and the other owner doesn't, but if someone owned it all, then does that issue go away because, you own it all now?
Actually, great point, council member. If one person owned all of that block, if we owned all of that block, we'll still redesign it to have a big loop road going all the way through it. So I think the Sanger Unified portion, if we can outline that again, Dave, if you look on the screen, the Sanger Unified parcel has Loma Vista Drive going through it and has a section of high-density apartments. So one owner of that 50-acre parcel, two different land uses, and then Loma Vista is going through their campus, and they go, we can't have Loma Vista go through our campus. It needs to be on the perimeter. It needs to butt to our campus. Almost think of Ashland Avenue going through Reagan. So it's on the perimeter. Ashland works really well on the perimeter.
And my other question is, so if it was within a development, then it's much more doable, is what you're saying.
Correct.
Because it is a major street, that's what's making it difficult.
That's correct. And we will probably, if we develop, the yellow, we'll probably end up doing curvilinear streets internally, but it becomes really difficult to deal with, just small, odd-shaped parcels that have different densities. And, in my opinion, won't look as attractive. Architecturally, you become a lot more limited if you're dealing with a triangle to do something really attractive, because you deal with all those ends. And we've built triangles, we've built squares, we've built trapezoids, and it becomes, architecturally, you can do so many more attractive things, and you can actually bend your buildings or angle your buildings within a rectangular design and a rectangular piece of property, and it becomes, now you're actually controlling the design and could turn out substantially more attractive.
And infrastructure-wise, would this cost more and make it more difficult to get infrastructure to whatever is being developed within certain parcels because it's curved, or is it not?
And this could cost more. Every time you take a straight line and bend it, it costs more, depending on how much you're bending it. So the biggest challenge, really, today we're looking for designs that are visually appealing and make the neighborhoods walkable. I think one of you brought up, I think it was you, maybe, council member. People love trails and walkable trails that make the neighborhood walkable, and they can walk to their park, rather than get in the car and drive. So, we want to have a very attractive trail system wherever we build. City of Clovis requires that in most developments, and have it visually attractive, but yet not so cost prohibitive. So some of the trail systems that we build, you see we have meandering walks, and there's tree lines, so that actually the trees end up, following this meandering pathway, which makes it more, just small design elements that make the homeowner or the retail customer's experience more attractive.
And last question, I don't know if this is for our staff or for you, because you have some interest in it. Why not go the traditional route of just a GPA versus kind of testing the waters, where a city initiates? And I asked that of our staff, how do we recover our costs when we initiate something? Because what if it requires a EIR and all that? Do we bear all that? Because if it was coming from, a developer, they would probably, if it was approved, they bear all those costs. But then if we approve our own GPA, do we then do all those studies that are found out?
Yeah, my understanding is that the City of Clovis has done it both ways, where we just absorb the cost. There I guess, relatively incidental. I think we've also initiated as a city-led effort a general plan amendment or a master plan preparation, and then recoup those costs as development has proceeded within that area, which is certainly an option if that's something that you wanted to consider. But just to back up just a little bit in terms of how we got here, I probably should have covered this in a little more depth. The initial discussions were relatively focused on just the residential area, which is in that kind of the heart of the residential area, which is most developable. And the question was, well, what would it look like if we tried to maybe clean this up and make it a little more straightforward to develop? And we met internally with our PDS team, our Planning and Development Services team, and we thought we could make that work. But the more we got into it, when you started to change the circulation patterns, then the land uses were affected. And then we discovered pretty quickly that you can't change the circulation and land use just for the area that this initial developer was looking at, because one change affected the next property outside of those boundaries. And so if you add just a little bit of property outside the boundary, then those changes affect the next property. And so we started out as a relatively focused project that, in my view, would have been a developer-based project as part of a master plan. But as we got into it, it became clear that really the entirety of the circulation in the Eastern Village was affected, and the number of owners got to a point where it was beyond the scale of a single project or developer to pursue as an applicant, or at least it was a reasonable request to consider. But that doesn't mean that has to be the way that it's processed. We just believed it was reasonable to look at it from that perspective.
I just feel like there's so much more complexities than just what has been presented, meaning there are a lot of reasons for it that sometimes is not here. For example, you brought up a school, but it's not in our report that that's an issue. And a part of me goes, I wish we had more information to understand why, and the reasons were sort of high level, and so it makes it where I agree with Councilman Whalen. Well, how do you know that's an issue? Because we haven't really tried it, but you know, when you start to explain it that way, and you go, okay, now how do we fix it, and what? And so is it the initiation that gets to that, or do we need to get to know that before we decide if we start the initiation? And that's where I'm kind of confused right now to where I stand.
We were confused too, actually. So we talked to staff and said, as Dave just outlined, there's multiple property owners, and one change impacts everybody, and all of us met right here in this chamber, all the property owners with staff, and they outlined, okay, here's a potential circulation pattern that if council adopts or gives us the initiation, we could take a look at. So we asked, okay, what is the process? Because, we want some certainty. We're looking at purchasing property, the yellow mainly in this area. And, we want to know, can it be developed over the next few years? And if it can't, then, and if it's too complicated, then, we don't need to invest in this part of Clovis. And they said, no, Shaw Avenue, we're just widening Shaw Avenue, we're putting a lot of infrastructure. The city is actually investing dollars in Shaw Avenue, and we want to see this area develop as the last part of the Loma Vista General Plan. So we said, okay, we have an interest. What does the process look like? They said, well, once we get a green light from council to initiate, then we will start looking at answering all of, I think, the detailed questions that you have. And also the questions that we have. What will this thing look like? What will the environmental look like? But until, I guess, there's an initiation from council, they can't even look at that. They can't study it to come back to us and say, okay, here's what you need to do, here's what you're responsible for, and here's the process we're going to go through to get this thing done.
And Dave, my concern is does initiation lock us? You see, you initiate the GPA, you're gonna bring it back to yourself, and so I want to study it, and I want to know the issues, yet, in the end, if it's no, I feel like, wasted your time, and I'm sort of at that issue right now with myself, so. That's just, how do we get there, but then what if we don't, even though you need us to initiate it? Can we get there without us initiating it at all?
If you don't initiate, if it doesn't become a city-led project, then, we will not initiate the application or start it on the city's initiative. Then whether it's Mr. Simi or other owners or a group of owners could consider whether they wanted to, initiate the same kind of amendments, as the applicant. And there would be nothing that would, well, yeah. I think we'd have to confirm all of those details, but I think that would be an eligible process that they could initiate as owners.
Yep. There you go.
Yes. So I've been on the council since 2003, and I've always been very curious about the economics of development. I don't always understand it, and when I think I do, I realize I don't. So let's just take, for example, the Sanger folks. They've decided to purchase some property. They knew the layout, presumably, of the Loma Vista specific plan, and now our general plan, and they, for whatever reason, have calculated in their mind that despite the curvilinear streets and the division, they wanted to make this purchase, and so they did. And that's a decision that they made, that they're adults, they, have a fiduciary responsibility and thought it was worth it. So whatever the reason they chose to make that decision, they did. Now, you're looking at that yellow piece of property, it sounds like, and it looks like to me that that's kind of hardly any curvilinear streets.
Yeah, part of the orange, yellow and orange, actually, yeah.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
So there's some angles there, and I see that. But you go into it as a developer saying, I know what is there, I know what the plan calls for, and if I can make this pencil out, I'm going to, either buy an option on this property or I'm going to buy this property. So what I guess you're communicating is that if these changes aren't made to the roads, the larger curvilinear roads, then it's not going to pencil out for you, and you're not going to, exercise your option or purchase the property. And that also is a decision that you can make freely, and you've made hundreds of decisions like this on, over your career. So, at least for us, we're saying, at least I'm saying, we don't want any part of it. If you want to change the specific plan, you come in through the regular process, not you specifically, but people who are interested. Maybe even Sanger Unified School District's going to come in and request some kind of an amendment. So I don't understand why. There can't be any surprise when you take a look at a piece of property what the expectation is, so I guess maybe the way that the economics work is that you're not, what the plan is, at least from the City of Clovis's perspective, but you choose to invest in it hoping that you can maybe change our mind, and it becomes, more financially feasible for you. Is that kind of how it works?
Let me maybe reverse that slightly. The biggest challenge is the land use. So you can actually take a look at the triangles. So how do we build that triangle? That's, the biggest challenge that creates. Can I borrow that?
Requires a license to use that.
What is that?
I said that requires special certification to use that.
Let's see if I can make it work. Look at that. Okay. So, as an example, I don't know if it's this, there's a parcel here that is business park.
And I think, Dave, you kind of put a focus on that area,
Yeah.
didn't you? Okay.
So the challenge becomes, how do you really develop that triangular piece as an office, and then build this as an apartment complex, build this as another apartment complex? Really, so I believe that these are medium density, that's office. So what happens to that piece? So these are the questions that we have, and some of it is economics. You're exactly right, council member. You know, and so at the end of the day, we want an attractive design. We want it because that leases office space, brings the retail in, and you know, sells homes and helps lease apartments. We want the most attractive design that we can get without creating parcels that are very, very difficult to develop. So, and that's when we approached the City of Clovis staff and said, hey, are you guys open to this? If you are, we want to look at this area. And they said, we just recently, city initiated, we just, you know, cleaned up some of the, you know, the town square just further west, and also north of Shaw. That was city initiated. And from what I understand, it's city initiated because it involves so many of the property owners. If it was just a parcel that we're developing and we wanted to change something, we would initiate the whole thing. And for us, I don't know if it's a cost issue for the city. It's not a cost issue for us. I mean, can we do it? I mean, is it feasible for us to actually initiate the whole thing? I don't believe it is, because we own a small piece of that area. So if it's a cost issue, I'm sure several of us property owners can get together. I think McFarland's own a big chunk of that area. The church owns. The church is very interested in fixing the circulation. So is the other that property. Oops, where did it go? That property owner. These two property owners do these two and the school, which we have talked to. I have not talked to Sari. I know somebody, Christine in our office is talking to Sari, but I mean, these are years, the rest of the parcel is like years away from development. This area here that we're looking at is, you know, can be developed. You know, we're going to hit a recession here in the next, you know, year, and maybe end of this year. It's already starting, but probably in the next cycle, which is probably, our forecast is, you know, mid-24, come out of the recession and get ready. And I think, so we want to do all the planning, get it all ready, get it all, you know, developable, and start developing in 24, 25 time period. And it'll take that long to go through all the planning. I mean, obviously, we're going to be paying for all the design of the roads, trails, engineering, all of that we're going to be paying for. The part that we're, you know, that's going to be within our, the parcels we're looking at is this area here and this area here.
Well, I don't deny that there are challenges associated with it, right? And you say, well, you know, how is it that one can develop on those particular odd-shaped or triangular-shaped lots, and particularly when you have multiple parcels that are being intersected by roads. And
with different land uses.
Yeah, with different land uses. Right. So, yeah, I agree that that's a challenge, right? Right. But those are questions for, well, first that I'm hoping were considered or during the specific plan that was adopted for Loma Vista, because we had developers, we had landowners, we had stakeholders from all over the city of Clovis who are putting that together. And for whatever reason, all of those stakeholders said, hey, yeah, this is doable, this is how it's gonna happen. Now maybe, you know, that we have to, the rubber meets the road, because now you are looking at actually trying to figure out how to do this. You're struggling with it not because you're not capable, because you are capable. It's just from an economic perspective, it sounds like it's challenging. And so then that...
Design and economics.
Okay, all right. So to make it a beautiful design.
Really,
See,
yeah.
I've always felt like these kind of odd-shaped properties can come up with some really unique designs. And they can be pretty exceptionally beautiful because they're not like any place else.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of buildings that I think of that have necessity is the mother of invention, and you end up with a really beautifully invented design. Anyway, I just am. It is a challenge. I understand it's a challenge, but I'm confident that you or whoever chooses to purchase this property can overcome those challenges with some pretty unique design concepts. It's not going to be easy, and I'm not saying that you do this. It won't be easy if you just want to have a cookie cutter approach to development, because no, this isn't the shape of a cookie. You have to kind of put something in there that's a little bit unique, and I think that creates opportunity. And that's so for me. I appreciate you being here. Obviously, I appreciate the comments that you've made. I really do want to have a better understanding of it, and I think that you've given me some of that understanding. So those are my questions and comments.
Thank you.
Thank you. I say no to a lot of people and no one ever does. You're the only person that's ever done what I told you. I'm so impressed. Go ahead.
Well, I do want to say, Darius, that if it's developing that way, you're the gatekeeper. Because if you strain, then everything's straight, right? But if you keep it, everything is kept as well. So it's a really important piece, meaning a tough decision here, and potentially you, if it goes personally, meaning you bring in the GPA forward, or if we initiate, because once we straighten it there, it's straightened forever. But once you develop it as curved, it's curved forever as well. So I just see this as such a critical part.
You can do it.
We believe in you. All right, that's enough of that. Okay. I've lost track. Public comment. Is there anyone else who'd like to comment on this item? Anyone on the web?
No.
All right, we will close the public portion, and we'll bring it back to the council. There is a request to adopt a resolution, so there is an action item in front of us. So a motion would be appropriate one way or the other.
I move that we decline the invitation to initiate changes incorporated in that resolution.
Is there a second? I'll second it if you look reluctant. I just want to say, I agree with Bob. Everything you said is exactly right, and within the power of our existing land use processes to manage. So I think that's where I'm a little confused. So I'd say that. And second, I'd say the grid thing is too much. Like it's,
You want me to speak for you? I'm happy to do that.
Heavens, no. Anyway, I just think so that I believe to be true, and I think the grid layout that you had, whatever you end up with, is we've lost that sort of interesting look. And so I know that the development community, you or whoever it is, can figure out a way to preserve some of that uniqueness through the existing processes that we have. And I agree. I just don't think we're ready to be I'm not compelled tonight. And Sanger Unified's not here, so we're doing a lot of talking for a district that's not even in the room. So that seems weird to me because I don't know. I'm not that I don't believe you, but they're not here to speak for themselves. The answer is no, you can't. Okay, fine. Ask a question really fast. I thought I'd be home like an hour ago. Can you talk over here, though? You have to talk over here. And you have to give back the laser pointer. Sorry.
If I may, does it make sense for us to come back to you with a modified grid design and bring Sanger Unified to this discussion? So does it make sense to postpone this so that we can actually hear from Sanger Unified and we come up with a design? I think we've heard you tonight. If you give staff the permission to work with us, let us come back with something that's not as curvy, but maybe something that you go, okay, we can work with this, and you can hear from Sanger at the same time. So is it possible to postpone this a few weeks to?
Well, there is a motion right now on the floor to decline, and there's a second, so we'll see what happens there.
Got it.
maybe, but
Okay, thank you.
it's fair. It's a fair compromise.
Thank you.
There's been a motion and a second, and there's only 3 people up here. So, but it doesn't mean that you can't come back. Obviously, you can come back whenever you would like. It's just probably going to be a broader conversation.
So there's a motion and a second to decline this action on the resolution. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
So the motion fails. 2 decline, 1 in favor, needs 3 votes, so it fails, right? Or his motion passes, but the resolution doesn't go forward.
Correct.
Yeah, all right, so, thanks. All right, the next item is a request authorizing the city manager to execute a consultant agreement with the City of Clovis and the De Novo Planning Group for services related to the preparation of the 2014 General Plan Review and Guidance Document. And staff on this is Ricky.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, members of the council. It's been a long time since I've been up here. So, again, the request is, staff is requesting of council to authorize the city manager to enter into a consultant agreement with De Novo Planning Group for services related to the preparation of the 2014 Clovis General Plan Review and Guidance Document. So just a little background on the reasons for the request. The best way to kind of look at this is kind of like the first step in deciding later on if we want to move forward as a city with a general plan update. So this is kind of an audit, if you will, of our existing general plan. Part of this came about just kind of from the more frequent changes to laws and new laws since 2014. You're familiar with a lot of them. Obviously, housing, there's new laws and changing laws on that, seems like several times a year. VMT, streamlining bills, SB 9, et cetera. Also, we've noticed an uptick in increased requests for annexations and sphere changes, as well as general plan amendments for various reasons. We just talked about one previously. And then as well as potential biological constraints in some of the areas throughout the city and its planning area that were previously planned for development. And then also with some scarcity of vacant infill properties within city limits. So collectively, all those things, we kind of took a step back and said, hey, maybe we need to look at doing some form of an update on a broader scale. So that's why we kind of went down this process. So the review and guidance document itself is going to allow for a few things. One of them is, if this process moves forward, it will allow us to identify and work with the consultant to pull out and figure out what those key concepts or items are that we want to focus on for a general plan update, if that's what we choose to move forward with. Examples of those are sphere of influence. You know, do we want to expand it? If so, where? What are the pros and cons of doing that? Obviously with that, you know, looking at utility and water infrastructure, as well as kind of changing development trends. We've obviously been in front of you the last several years, several times for either the PRDs and things like that. So just kind of looking at where those trends are going to go. And this kind of allows us to look at that and sort of refocus and see if we need to change anything on a broader scale from 2014. So the effort that this would produce is a guidance document or strategy document of some sort at the end that, you know, staff would then bring back to you later this fall or winter to then seek formal direction on if we want to move forward with the general plan update or not. Part of the work here will help us to inform and create a better scope for an RFP, a request for a proposal, if we do go out for the update. And we'll be able to kind of tailor that to really know what we want to focus on and be able to put that out there when we are selecting a consultant for the general plan update. So just a little history on the general plans. 1963, it's hard to read that, but that's what the best looking document we have from 1963. This was actually called a preliminary general plan. It was about 10 or 11 pages long, so it's on our website if you care to flip through it real quick. Fast forward 11 years later, 1974, one of the first general plans in Clovis. 19 years later, the 1993 general plan, and then the one we're currently using, which is 21 years after the 93, which is a pretty big update, which I'm sure you know, was in 2014, and then depending on where we go tonight, and subsequently, there might be an update sometime, earlier than 21 years. So the city, for this particular, piece of work, we issued an RFP last December. The deadline for the proposals were January 14th. We received, eight proposals from different consulting firms, which is a pretty good return on that. Out of those 8, we chose to interview 5 of them, and our recommended firm is De Novo Planning Group. I do have Ben from De Novo here to my left, which I'll allow him to introduce himself in a moment, and you can ask him any questions that you might have. So the tasks that are outlined in the scope of work that was provided by NOVA are broken down kind of simply into 5 tasks. Task 1 would be the project initiation and issues identification. Under that, there would be stakeholders identified and kind of meetings set up just to sort of see what works, what doesn't. Part of that would include some kind of meeting with Planning Commission and or City Council to get your guys' feedback about what works, what doesn't, what you might like to see in an update. Task 2 would kind of center on regulatory requirements, so there'd be a summary of kind of key requirements or changes in law that have occurred since 2014 that we might want to pay attention to for an eventual update. As well as Task 3, summary of key issues. So kind of using the information from Task 1 and 2, De Novo would provide a summary of, if there's any deficiencies or maybe there's something from the 2014 general plan that doesn't necessarily comply with, today's laws. That sort of thing, so that would be Task 3. And then finally, Task 4 would be strategies and recommendations. That could come in the form of presented information differently. We'd work with the consultant on what that end product looks like. They can come out with, 3 very distinct options. If we want to take a different approach, they can sort of lay out kind of a menu of items and kind of tell you what the pros and cons are for each one. So we would work with them to kind of define what that document looks like that we bring back to you. For this effort, the RFP had a budget not to exceed $75,000. De Novo actually came in at $60,000 base, so quite a bit. We are recommending a $10,000 contingency just to account for unforeseen circumstances if we decide we want extra meetings as part of, Task 1 or 2 or something like that. So it's just nice to have that coverage. We did put a timeline in there of completion within 6 months. If we can, we'll try to, consolidate that, maybe get it something a little bit less than that, but it wouldn't be any longer than 6 months for this first effort. So in terms of timeline, we're here tonight requesting to be able to enter into that agreement. Sometime in the fall or winter of 2022, no more than 6 months from now, staff would come back to you and present the findings on there and then seek that formal direction to be able to go out with an RFP for the update itself. If directed at that time, staff would anticipate putting an RFP out sometime in the late winter of 2022, possibly early 2023, depending on timing and where we're at. And then following consultant bid process, staff would recommend a consultant for the update. We would come back to you kind of similar to how we're here tonight, sometime in the early part of 2023, which means that an actual general plan update could kick off as early as next year. So just a little bit on De Novo Planning Group. The firm was established in 2008. It's a multidisciplinary firm, which means it has expertise in several areas. General plans, of course, is one of them. CEQA, NEPA, housing, zoning, natural resources. So they have a wide range of expertise that can certainly help throughout this effort. They've completed over 200 projects of varying degrees throughout the state. And again, they do have extensive experience in preparing general plans, in particular, Ben here to my left. So Ben, he can correct us if I missed anything here, but there's, or add to it, he has more than 17 years of experience. He does have a hands-on approach with projects. I think that's one of the reasons we're recommending them. Sometimes firms will, bring their top dogs to the interview, and then it ends up going to a junior staff, and that's kind of the model. With this particular effort, we're actually getting Ben working on it. He's a principal level staff person and co-founder of De Novo, so we'd actually be working with him directly on this project. And then again, Ben. He does, yeah. That's their question for you. They want to know about your beard. De Novo does have a proven track record of completing projects on time and within budget, which is, of course, a good thing with consultants. And then, again, Ben does have significant experience personally with general plan updates. So with that, staff does recommend council approve the resolution requesting the city manager, or requesting authority for the city manager to execute the agreement between the city and De Novo Planning Group. And as I mentioned, I have Ben here, which I'll kick it over to him, and he can kind of introduce himself a little bit more and De Novo Planning Group.
Yes, to convince us that that's really his picture up there. It does not look like that.
It is a COVID beard. I tried to shave it off, and my kids just were up in arms. They couldn't fathom the notion. So, and my wife begrudgingly let me keep it. So, yeah, I appreciate the introduction, Ricky. So yeah, I'm Ben Ritchie. I've been doing this upwards of 20 years. I'm one of the founders of De Novo. We're about to have our 14-year anniversary as a firm. I've had the pleasure of managing general plans up and down the state, from urban centers in the Bay Area to rural counties through Northern and Central California. It's a big undertaking to do a comprehensive general plan update, so I actually commend the city for having the foresight to do this kind of preliminary planning to really calibrate what your scope of work might look like. You know, I'm sure as the council is aware, general plans can run anything from $500,000 to several $1 million. They can take multiple years. And there are so many options in terms of what we look at, what we study, what are the key issues. Are you spending money on infrastructure planning at the general plan level? To what degree are you studying land use alternatives? You know, obviously you want a meaningful, awesome, you know, I've been sitting here this evening, public participation and transparency is obviously of paramount importance. What does that program look like? So as someone who has a lot of experience bidding on general plans, the more that the city has a grasp on what your intended outcomes are, what you'll use as benchmarks for success, we can give recommendations on what a work plan might look like to help you accomplish your objectives. So the kind of the bottom line of what our task would be on this contract would be to do an audit of your existing plan and see what is, you know, compliant or non-compliant with state law. That's kind of the simpler component of it. And the other one is to ask a lot of questions and do a lot of listening to try and get a sense of where you're telling us you want to go in terms of, we want to study this, we want to look at this, we see these as the challenges. And then what we intend to do in this report is kind of lay out a matrix of tools and give you kind of pros and cons of these are the different options that you may consider as part of an update. You'll have good ROI on some of them. You know, some of them might be tasks that, you know, it's not necessary for where I think you want to go. Do you need a comprehensive update? So what we'll try and do is lay out a bunch of key things for you as a council to consider so that you can direct staff appropriately to craft an RFP that's going to get you what you need in terms of the update, no more, no less. So you could spend top dollar and realize you did tasks that really didn't matter. We've seen clients do that. You spend all this work on these alternatives reports and we bleed over them and they're thousands and tens of thousands of dollars, and then no one used them as a tool. So what are the tools at your disposal? You know, what are some thoughts on what you might want to include in a work program? So I see this as kind of a useful pre-investment before you make a real investment on a general plan update. So happy to answer any questions or talk about thoughts.
Thank you, Ben. Question? Bob?
Have we done like a prequel to our general plan update before that helps us inform the RFP? Because I don't remember doing that in 2014.
Yeah, it's my understanding we did not do that in 2014, or before.
Okay. And then would De Novo be able to participate in the RFP if they're the ones that are putting together this particular concept?
That's a good question. Yes, they would. So when we put out the RFP for this effort, you know, we did make it very clear in there, though, that it doesn't necessarily mean they're going to, you know, have an upper hand or anything. This is two very separate, distinct items. But this effort, if they do this, doesn't preclude them from going after the subsequent general plan update.
All right. I mean, nothing against you, Brian, but I mean, theoretically, if they wanted to, they can kind of put together some concepts that are leading to the strengths of their organization, and that might give them a bit of an advantage when it comes to that. So I don't know how we would monitor that. We would just trust, I think, our staff to take care of that. And then, Brian, why did you guys choose the name De Novo?
It's Ben.
I'm sorry,
De Novo,
Ben.
it's,
Brian didn't have a beard.
that's okay.
Thank you.
It's funny, I kept my notebook from when we were writing the business plan. It's Latin for of the new. I was 29 when we started the company. It was a fresh start. It was kind of a fresh approach to planning. De Novo Planning was an available web domain. That was
all the important reasons.
It's the practical reasons.
It was a lot. My partner Steve, he's actually it's funny, I got like 6 pages of notes of just like gibberish names, and I just constantly jot down ideas. And,
okay. Yeah, all right. I didn't know thank you for explaining that to me. Because, sometimes De Novo can mean that it's a brand new look, right? And so, I didn't know if that was kind of your selling point, is that you are coming in here with an idea to make some significant changes to how it is that we've done business in the city of Clovis. If that's kind of what your selling point, and you go into those cities that have had trouble with general plans in the past, and trying to give them a fresh start, or if it's just a name that, was available, a web domain.
Somewhere in between, it's not an overpitch on a radical approach. I think what our selling point is I consider myself an expert with a deep toolkit who comes into communities and does a whole lot of listening, and then I act as a navigator to help take you where you've told me you would like to go. Okay. And so I've worked in very disparate, differing, diverse communities all over California, and what I pride myself in is delivering the general plan that the community and city leadership or county leadership has told me they would like. And so I have some radically different general plans that I've been able to manage and shepherd through the process, and I gauge success based on my client's satisfaction with what we delivered based on what they told us they wanted. Okay. So.
And then VMT has become kind of an acronym that has been problematic. Have you guys had some experience in trying to figure that out? I know it's relatively early. But...
Significantly, and we're also, peripherally involved is, the CEQA work with the VMT guidelines and study you're doing with Kittleson right now, and I don't know if you want me to go down the rabbit hole, but I could bend your ear on kind of keying up the different CEQA and the tiering and the general plan consistency, how VMT is folded into that, how you get yourselves out of the conundrum of doing EIRs on what should be simple mitigated neg decks were it not for the VMT issue based on its geography of your heat map checkerboard of high and low VMT areas within the city. And so what we'll do as part of this document is recommend strategies on how you dovetail those together. You get a top tier CEQA EIR for the general plan, how you can use statement of overriding considerations once and then tier off of them for subsequent projects. So part of my job is helping you guys see the big picture or navigating strategies and suggestions for how this will function for the next 10, 15, 20 years.
And then I know I'm hogging it up, but I have a feeling we're going to do what staff wants us to do on this. But I am curious as to, for me, the measurement of success isn't necessarily that you do what we want you to do. The measurement of success is whether the general plans that you put together have actually been executed consistent with that plan.
What I can say for that is we have had significant opportunities to be asked back to provide on-call planning services for clients that we've completed general plans for. So I have multiple jurisdictions where it's been upwards of 10 years since we've completed their general plan update, and then we'll provide on-call CEQA services for the next subsequent decade and still do. And so we are implementing the plan that we have helped write, and we are watching it come to fruition over the course of 10 years to great success. And we're continued to be invited back to those communities. So that's my greatest benchmark of whether or not we're doing it right.
Thank you, Brian. Ben?
Ben. Vaughn?
Sure. Ricky, is this the point where we also, as the council, direct you and the consultant to go look at certain things, or that's not yet? Is that second step?
Well,
because you listed certain items, you listed bullet points where you will research, but if there's something not on here, is this when we put it in or no?
Yeah, that's a good question. You certainly can, but as part of this work, if it moves forward, there will be other outreach and other opportunities to hear from both you, the Planning Commission, and other stakeholders that we identify. You know, part of the scope will be refined a little bit to define, you know, what that process looks like, but that would probably happen early on, you know, probably as early as later this month, early next month. So if you have any particular points or thoughts that you want to throw us out now, it's certainly fine.
There's another time that we can wait till then. How much public input does this process involve, or is it more our staff, Planning Commission, and council only?
That's a good question. So I think that those are some of the details that we'll work out. I think it could be a double-edged sword if we do like a full-on, you know, full blitz of public outreach. This probably isn't going to get done in 6 months versus if we keep it more to like Planning Commission, council, stakeholders that we identify, you know, some community groups perhaps, you know, DIA, things like that. We'll try to keep it kind of limited, but also get a good kind of feel for the representative groups before we actually go out and do the full-on, you know, public participation.
Because I recall last time, for example, we said we didn't need to study Hunter and Shepherd because there was not enough interest, but we studied Old Town. And so, in other words, if we all don't say anything to a certain, but then community groups may want us to relook at Southwest or something like that, how does that, you know, how do we ensure that something the community wants, even if staff and us don't want, gets looked at?
Yeah, so if something is missed and kind of, you know, for example, if one group, you know, isn't part of the stakeholder interviews, eventually when we do a general plan update, if that's where we go, we would have more of a robust outreach program as part of that. And that's part of one of the tasks that they would do here is kind of give us the pros and cons of what kind of public outreach we want to do. Do we want to hold, you know, 30 public meetings, workshops? Do we want to hold 10 or 15, and what kind of implications that would have on the budget and timing of completion of a general plan update?
One thing I do want to put in there, as I think I've heard this from several of my peers, is the 50-year general plan. So instead of just 2030, that has to be sort of the where we're shooting at, because I think that changes the mindset and changes how we plan, how we look at all these items that we'll be looking into. So if we can, at least for me, I know Lynn has said that many times as well, that if we put that 50-year mark as sort of, okay, if we're going to look at streets, how does it look in 50 years instead of just 10, 15 years? And so if we can do that, I think that's important. And then I don't know where it goes, and it may be later on, but I've always wanted, if it's not here, when do we review all the codes and go, these don't apply, let's get rid of them? And if it's too much work, I don't know if this is it, but if that's also a good time, I think that's important to look into that sometime, because sometimes we only run into it when an application comes forward and we realize, okay, that wasn't it there, but if we can be proactive, yeah. And then I guess we're relying on you, Ben, to also guide us, coach us on what other cities are sort of the scope of they're looking into, and so that way we can also kind of, hey, have you guys will you look at this for your city moving forward? Is that something that you will be providing to us, some sort of guidance?
Yeah.
Or is it you're relying solely on us to tell you where to go?
No, I'm going to ask questions on more about what does a successful destination look like in terms of 20, 30, 50 years from now.
Mm-hmm.
And based on what you're telling me and based on how we audit and determine if or how well or how deficient your current general plan is addressing those, priorities and values that you've articulated, what we'll do is lay out the various options and tools at your disposal for any firm to come in and do a comprehensive general plan update. So that when you're interviewing, because we don't expect, we may or may not bid on an actual general plan update for you. That's a separate project, and it's been made very clear, and I fully expect for us to have to compete on a completely level playing field for any subsequent contract on this. And so you'll have other very successful, very, reputable firms bidding on your general plan update. What I gauge success on for this contract, this process, is to give you a solid understanding and a solid set of recommendations on what that scope of work ought to look like. Because there can be wild swings in cost and number of studies. Do you really need to look at this? You know, so I'll provide recommendations and have a dialogue with you guys so that when that RFP goes out for the actual general plan update, you'll feel pretty confident that it's well refined. As someone who's bid on dozens and dozens of general plan RFPs, the more the client understands what they're looking for, the more responsive a consultant can be to give you a well-calibrated price and a well-calibrated scope of work. And so instead of seeing budgets that may differ by, you know, certainly 6 and maybe even 7 figures, you'll be much more calibrated in terms of what the bidders are giving you. You'll have apples-to-apples comparison, and I think it'll really position you well as a city to optimize the process of your general plan update. So I've seen a lot of tools. I've seen them work well in some situations, not in others. So based on where I glean you would like to go with your general plan update, I'll be in a position to make recommendations on kind of pros and cons of different approaches.
And I guess my last thought is, you know, we talked about this a lot this evening, and I don't know if it falls into the general plan, but how do we also preserve all the things that we have had that is important to the city of Clovis, that we intentionally look at those things? And if that's something in which our planning documents have, I think it helps those who come in here to go, oh, that's an important part of the community, or that's an important building, or that's an important street, or whatever it is. Yeah, I hope we look at that as this council. I think we've expressed that desire. So.
Absolutely, and anybody who's actually executing the task of updating your general plan had better gain a good understanding of what the values are, what's currently working, and what needs to be retained and carried forward. So there's going to be certain things that are probably complete redos, and then there's going to be certain things that may not get touched at all, and that's part of a good process.
Thanks, Paul. Just a couple of comments. I agree with the historical preservation. I think that's really an important part of Clovis. The notes I wrote down is I think the downside for you is we haven't updated our city's vision in about 50 years. Okay, not really, but it's 20 years old. So I think you're going to bump into a little bit of, you know, varying visions for the city of Clovis. So we may get an updated vision from that, but my colleagues will know that I've said that 100 times over the last decade. So I think it's a gap, and so we'll see. I just want to say you'll bump into that. The other thing we talked about last time is I am interested in, this can't take 10 years to do this general plan. I hope the scope is sensitive to something about getting it done in a reasonable period of time, because otherwise, you know, you're 10 years into your 50-year plan, and I think that doesn't seem practical. The world changes so quickly today. And I just wanted to add, I think to Bob's point, or maybe it was Fong, I don't know. They both talk all the time. I just don't really know. I think your insight into trends we should be considering in our general plan is really important. And what I think about are people do retail differently now, and so maybe in the next 3 years we're going to have 60% of our big box stores are going to be vacant. What is that? What happens there? So maybe there's elements of the general plan that are not about a space, like a street or a quarter section, but rather a kind of occupancy or a kind of land use. So I think those are the things that, you know, because of your experience, I hope you can help us sort of highlight the things that we should be paying attention to that we may not see today, but certainly in the scope of the plan will be a problem for us. So anyway, thank you. Thanks for being here, whatever your name is and whichever photo you'd like to show. But we're glad you're here, and thank you for your comment. I'll open the public comment. Anybody want to speak to the action before us, which is to authorize the city manager to execute an agreement that we've talked about tonight? Any public comment on that? Sure. I did not expect this. You know, you should come to these more often. You've had so much fun tonight.
I'm reminded, I just met Chad McCollum. I told him that I was at the lift station, and so they lifted me up on this pedestal where they had a monument to someone that said, always an opinion. They said, we need you on here to take a picture of you, always an opinion. So I have an opinion about this because I did serve on the last General Plan Update Committee, and the long process. And out of that, I would say, you know, that was really picking big chunks of territory to claim, and that could happen again in the next, probably will, expansion. But, at that time, we were doing a lot of research for the home place. And so we went as far as Chicago. There was a wonderful railroad spur north of Chicago, and they did this great plan. And then you got on the train and went down to Chicago and went back home. And then we went to Idaho. And everything else was LA, Orange County, you know. So I think that just looking at Ben, and knowing his name Ben, I think we should, you know, take into account historical places that have stayed alive. And the name Healdsburg always comes to my mind as an example of a town that just has so much heart, and people just always want to keep going back to the same place. But if you get a Southern California planner, you'll get more Southern California, and pretty soon the whole state will look like Southern California, and that is not what we want. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Excellent. Always have an opinion. I will share that pedestal with you. I have one too. All right, thanks, Sari. And that was Sari Miller, just for the record. I don't think she said her name. She's been here all night. She's kind of a regular all of a sudden.
And if I may, I can't claim Healdsburg, but we did do general plans for both Sebastopol and Cotati, so same neck of the woods.
Very nice. Anyone else wishing to comment? I think Mr. Schmidt came through the last public member. Would you like to comment? No. Would you like to stay another hour or so with us? No, I didn't. Oh, yeah. Get up here and make a comment. I'm just kidding. All right. Anyone on the web?
No.
No. Magic to my ears. Can you talk anymore? No. All right. We'll bring it back to the council. Is there a motion on the recommended action from staff tonight?
I'll move that we approve council's recommendation.
I'll second it.
You make a motion that we approve staff recommendation. Yeah. All right, there's a motion and a second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 3-0 with 2 absences. Oh, don't go. Come on. Thank you, Ricky. Thank you, Ben. And we look forward to the work. And Sari, thanks for being here. All right. City manager comments.
I was going to ask council if they actually noticed the new signage in the council chamber.
I did.
Well, we saw the picture of it, so I think I forgot to look above. It looks great. Well done, Carrie and team. Very nice.
She did. Carrie and Rebecca took the lead, and they did a great job.
Yeah, it's very nice.
Shauna's idea. So the new photos that you take, we did earlier, it will turn out pretty nice.
Oh, nice. Yeah, it looks great. Yes, and thanks for the photo. Even though my back brace is in the photo, it looks like the old person's chair. Very nice. Thank you. Anything else, John?
No, that's all I have.
Council comments? Fong. Okay, none for Bob. Fong?
The Measure C committee met, and so I think we will be getting ready, because I think it was a lot of educational items that came before us, but we'll be getting ready to look at the allocation sort of formula coming up. And so we'll also be doing an in-person meeting on, I think, May 4th. Wednesday. Okay. Yep. And so wanted to report that out. We also had the Cal City's Housing Community Economic Development meeting. There was a couple discussions on 2 of the bills. Both were, I think, approved if amended, support if amended. So we'll see if there are amendments to them. I think one of them is for churches. Was it churches, Andy, to allow them to be able to build on site?
Schools.
Oh, schools. Schools to build housing on site. So it's interesting how that's going to go. And the other one, Andy, what was the other one, if you can help refresh me?
I'm trying to remember, my memory is foggy on that long call as well. Yeah. There was a piece of legislation they discussed for some time that was regarding land use limits on restrictions for densities, I believe.
Yeah, it was going to affect how our tax dollars, it was, I forgot what it was, but we voted no on both, but yes, unless amended, it's still good.
It allowed a state agency to set up a statewide housing authority that could build housing throughout the state, and the state wouldn't be subject to the local density laws.
And then the other item we voted on was sort of a definition of local control. And so we voted to pretty much allow everything to look at. One was to amend the Constitution. One was to define what the state can or cannot do to restrict what local land use issues are. And so I'm hoping to see hoping that the cities will sort of move to protect local control once and when the staff brings something forward on that.
A constitutional amendment to
kind of like
protect?
what to protect, and so kind of
You mentioned that a couple of times. It's still out there, though.
That's still out there. I don't think they have the signatures yet, but this is something which Cal Cities will then initiate, and so which potentially, if it moves that way, will have a stronger backing. Went to the Clovis Community College, their groundbreaking for their applied technology building. So, thank Andy for being there. Exciting for Clovis Community College, and they also mentioned they're going to have I think a soccer field with a track in the future coming up as well. So a lot of new development there at Clovis Community College. And I wanted to give a special thanks to the two officers. I forget their name, but we have a Hmong officer whose father is Major Vang, who had a funeral over the weekend, and two of the Clovis PD officers were there for the entire time that Friday morning when a lot of the dignitaries came to speak, and I appreciated that they came out to show support of their fellow officers. I just wanted to mention that. If I see their faces, I recognize them, but I didn't get their names down. So they know who they are, but I wanted to recognize them. So thank you.
And I don't have anything tonight. So with that, we will adjourn the meeting or move to closed session, adjourn this part of the meeting, move to closed session. Will there be action coming from either of the items?
We are not requesting action tonight on any item.
All right. So with that, we'll adjourn this meeting into closed session and meet again next Monday, May 9th. Thanks.